Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Next Gen Racing GT3 Championship Season 2, as brought to you on the sim racing platform of iRacing on the PC. And tonight it marks round 6 of the 12-round calendar as we come to the end of the first half of the season before the Christmas break. As always, we'll be taking a look at the Coach Dave Academy Next Level Racing lobby tonight, or that's the CDA NLR lobby in short, also known as Lobby 2, as we take a look at how our drivers tackle the Le Mans circuit here, the French circuit, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a short while. But because this is a super endurance round, it is our 6th round. We have 2 super endurance rounds. It is going to be the case that we've got a slightly different schedule tonight. In fact, a cutback schedule. It's quite a simple one. At 8 o'clock in approximately 14 minutes time, so 8 o'clock this evening, Greenwich Mean Time, or GMT or UTC, depending on how you want to phrase it, we'll be getting underway with the 2-hour feature race. That will be our single super endurance race, and of course this race, a big race in that, and because it's the one race, it has some special rules applied to it, which we'll talk about more shortly. But before we get onto that, firstly, we'd like to just point out to you that if you are planning to tune in tonight, you can tune in via one of 3 media platforms. Firstly, via the official Next Gen Racing YouTube channel, that is Next Gen Racing on YouTube. Alternatively, the Next Gen Racing Facebook group, that's facebook.com/groups/Next Gen Racing. Or last but not least, if you are Twitch inclined, you can tune in via my personal Twitch channel, that is TX141 on Twitch. Now, who am I? Well, I'm going to be your commentator for this evening. My name's Paul Walsh, also known as TX141, or Britness Bit, depending on what media you follow me on, and I'll be bringing you all of the racing action over the course of the 2-hour race tonight, as we are currently in the final practice session with our drivers getting their final laps in before we do go racing. Now, before we start to introduce the particular rules and the intricacies of this circuit, we must take a brief moment to introduce our senior sponsors for this lobby. That's Coach Dave Academy and Next Level Racing. Who are they and what do they stand for? We start off with Coach Dave Academy, and Coach Dave Academy, in short, is the home of amateur and professional sim racers looking to up their game through coaching, setups and track maps. Whether you're looking to gain a tenth of a second, a whole second, or just find a way to set your car up in a better manner in order to be able to suit your driving style or for a particular type of race, Coach Dave Academy is the place to go to, with both paid and free resources readily available at CoachDaveAcademy.com, and indeed on the Coach Dave Academy Discord server as well. And whilst they started off particularly focusing on a set of course competition, they have expanded their services to iRacing, and indeed it has been a huge momentous wave of work they're putting into the iRacing platform at the moment. So if you are interested, be sure to check them out. And Coach Dave Academy supporting us by helping to provide to our prize pool for Lobby 2, and we're very grateful to have the CDA team on board with us. But we should not forget Next Level Racing, or NLR. And who are Next Level Racing? Well, founded in 2009, Next Level Racing is the world's leading simulation brand, revolutionising simulation with its industry-leading product range. With a clear focus on innovation and quality to meet the demanding needs of sim racers, Next Level Racing's designs and technology shall take your sim racing experience to the next level. If you want to know more about their products, be sure to head to their official website, that's nextlevelracing.com today, for further information. And Next Level Racing, once again, much like Coach Dave Academy, supporting us in contributing to the prize pool available to our Lobby 2 drivers come the end of the season. And there are prizes, of course, for our championship winners. There are also prizes for the drivers who are the most consistent performer, also the most improved driver over the course of the season, also the best overtake and the best livery, if I remember correctly, but do not quote me on that. I know there's a whole variety of awards and prizes up on offer. But we come away from talking about our sponsors and prizes to our championship standings, and after the opening 5 rounds going into the closure of the first half, we look at the pro class first, and we can see that following the race at the Hungaroring last time out, or the races I should say, Gareth Williams has now jumped back into the lead with an 18-point swing in his favour, in fact a 28-point swing in his favour, if we could do the math there, and some of that could be contributed to by Paul Walton having that race ban in the sprint race, meaning he was only able to pick up points on the feature race. Indeed, with Walton being the championship leader at that point in time going into the feature race, he had to start at the back, whereas Gareth Williams got to start slightly ahead. But it is the case that Gareth Williams, after what was a brilliant night of racing at Hungaroring, is now the leader of this championship. Will we see the momentum switch back, however, at the Le Mans circuit tonight? However, do not rule out Dan Moorey, Alistair Kirk and Michael Seale from P3 to P5. 3 drivers there who would be very keen to steal away some points from Walton and Williams over the course of tonight's racing and get themselves right back into that hunt for the championship lead. They're not far away, with Moorey through to Seale only separated separated by the margin of what is 9 points. Josh Wiggins there in P6, battling back after what was a difficult start to his season. The RD Simsport driver and Matthew Proughton, Stefan Albanese, Nigel Stock and Paul Scott completing our top 10. And looking outside of our top 10, Paul Scott's got to be careful because on 102 points right now, it is the case that Lamont Wedder, who was unable to participate last time at the Hungaroring, has fallen out of our top 10, but is only 3 points behind from getting back into the top 10 right now. And it is the case that Lamont Wedder will have a lot of momentum behind him. We know the Team Racing Netherlands driver can perform very strongly when it matters most. James Neve, Paul Williams, Koyoshi Kelly and Nathan J. Scott completing our top 15, with Koyoshi Kelly unable to take part tonight. Unfortunately, we'll miss the Ignium Motorsport driver out on the circuit. And then our top 20 there being rounded off by Stuart P. Taylor, Ed May, Rick Jansen, Jamie Dory and William Foyle. And as we come onto the AM class standings, meanwhile, we can see the picture here quite similar to what we saw in the Pro class, where it's been a contrast of the blistering pace of Stefan Wessels, and Wessels set history last time at the Hungaroring by having the perfect night and out-qualifying everybody in both classes to take pole position in the qualifying session at the Hungaroring. So Wessels setting history for this series, and right now leading the championship, the AM Championship, by what is 21 points over Mark Baker. But again, Mark Baker has been the more consistent performer, but Wessels has been the faster performer of the two, and it's that chalk and cheese situation whereby they have constantly been swapping places in the championship. But do not count out the likes of Davide Favo, Gareth Mills and Elwyn Sykes. All 3 drivers there looking to chase after our leaders and separated by only 20 points. Outside of our top 5 there, we can see Darren Doherty, Mark Sykes, Chris Keenan, Travis Linscombe, Hatfield and Liam Tack completing our top 10. And then looking outside the top 10 to the rest of our AM standings, we've got Tom Delaney there, who are unable to take part in the sprint race and a non-finish in the feature race at the Hungaroring. A frustrating day at the Hungarian circuit. Can he bounce back tonight, as he is joint on 66 points with Jack Wyborn, who on countback is behind Delaney at this point in time. Paul Colburn, Mark Jardine and Renus Hamron completing our top 15. And then Luke Hobson, Rhys Young, Adam B.M. Quinn, Tom Porter and Josh Brown completing our AM standings. Now we'll briefly touch on the team standings here, and you can see in the team championship that runs across both of the lobbies, it is the case that Luxim 24 with MV Esports continuing to lead by only what is 11 points over the Racing Team Astra team, or Team RTA. Now Team RTA, it's been clarified who they are. That was missing on the broadcast last time out. That is the combination of what is Stefan Wessels, Davide Favo and also Elwyn Sykes. So keep your eyes out for Team RTA, putting in solid performances all round, and they are keeping Luxim 24 with MV Esports honest. Then in the hunt for what is P2, you've got RD Simsport there, who are the best part of 30 or so points behind, and Switchback Motorsport and Altitude Esports continuing that pursuit as well. But we can see, ranging from what is effective P3 down to P10, with P10 being made up of Team Tetrarouge, all those teams are vying for critical points tonight and could have a good chance of continuing that pursuit of the top 2, who are making the breakaway, but they could be reeled in once again. Outside the top 10, McChange BE2 just holding on to P11 at this time, 3 points ahead of TGC Racing, and Ignium Motorsport joint 272 points with NextGen Orange, but ahead on count back in P13. Delta Motorsport, Ignium Blaze, RD Simsport and Bright Esports there, separated by the region of what is 35 points, and then SVPMR and McChange BE1 completing our top 20. And outside our top 20, we have TRN Blue, that's Team Racing Netherlands Blue, Ignium Motorsport Phoenix, TRN Red, TRN Orange and DDR completing our team standings. But now, let's come on to the circuit we're racing at tonight. We are here in the region of Pays de la Loire, in France, the western region of France, at the Le Mans circuit. We are at the circuit to 24-hour de Mans, and we are running the full variation of this circuit, 33 corners. And this circuit, renowned throughout the ages for being the legendary endurance circuit of ages, whether it be a case being run in LMP1 class cars, GT3s, GTUs, you name it, they have raced here for 24 hours. And this circuit is the ultimate challenge. It will put our drivers through the test like never before. The opening 5 rounds will have tested our drivers on particular aspects of driving at a circuit, but Le Mans will test every aspect of our drivers' ability, confidence and compatibility with their cars. And as we see from the reference lap, as we look over to it after the image provided to us by simracingwiki.com, the circuit map which we're forever grateful for, let's ride on board then with Paul Walton as he takes us around for a lap of the Le Mans circuit. So emerging out of the Ford chicanes and coming out of turn 33 and onto the start-finish straight, and now charging up towards the Dunlop chicane of turns 2 and 3. He goes to the right-hand kink here, flat out of turn number 1, using the full width of the circuit here to make it so he can take a flat-out apex, and then braking on the entry curve here, coming down the gearbox to second gear, attacking the apex of 2 and the same for 3, straight line the chicane and then powering out, keeping wise to the track limits. Through the left-hand kink of 4 and downhill into the flat-out corner of 5 before getting ready to brake into the left into right chicane of 6 and 7. Coming down to third gear here and getting nicely planted on the throttle as he now goes flat out through turn number 7 and now charged up towards Tetra Rouge corner. Turn number 8 here, and it's all about balancing the throttle on apex and immediately getting back on the power. Now you go down to the Mulsanne straight, the longest portion of the circuit, which is effectively a straight split up by 2 chicanes. Of course, being split up with chicanes due to safety reasons, because the older LMP cars of old, or the GT1 class cars as they used to be known, started taking off down here with speeds going in excess of 220 not 230 mile an hour, and the aerodynamics saw a small bit of wind get under the front of the car and the car would lift up into the stratosphere. Mark Webber knowing very much about that one. As he makes his way down into the first of the Mulsanne chicanes, he turn number 10, and as he comes on through nicely and smoothly through Walton, all the way down from second gear, and now building up the accelerator once again, building up the speed. And this second portion of the Mulsanne straight, a little bit shorter than the first. In fact, the second part of the Mulsanne straight hit the shortest section, and as a result, this one feels like it catches up to you rather quickly in terms of the second chicane. It's not as far away as you'd think. We can already see it starting to form in the distance, albeit it looks very far away, but I can assure you that Walton is now going to brake very heavily from 281 kilometres an hour, and as he brakes down there, coming through the chicane, going through turn at number 11, and as he emerges from second gear, a little bit of snap oversteer there on exit, trying to get the power on as early as possible, because now we've gone to the third section as he goes through the right-hand kink of which turn at number 12, and he heads up towards the Mulsanne corner. In fact, I think we've missed a corner number somewhere. We're heading into turns 14 and 15. The right-hand kink of 14 coming up flat out and then braking immediately after he's cleared the kink to go into the Mulsanne corner here, and as he comes all the way down from 274 kilometres an hour here, you see straight lining over the apex there and braking as he does so, coming down to first gear and now powering out through the corner, and that's the long charge down towards Indianapolis. And this straight here, a curved straight with 2 kinks in it which are completely flat out, it is the case another great opportunity for overtaking. Indeed, these straights we are going to see plenty of back and forth overtakes and slipstream battles, as we did see here last time out in season 1 in the sprint and the feature races. But indeed, here's going to be over the course of 2 hours, and that slipstream so critical. But focusing on Walton's lap right now, he makes his way into the right-hander here of Indianapolis curve as he comes on through and then brakes hard for the core part of Indianapolis. The left-hander coming all the way down the gearbox to second gear and now powering through as he heads up towards Arnage corner, getting ready to brake for the deceptive right angle corner as he comes all the way down the gearbox to first gear and powers out, just missing the exit wall there. He's running it as wide as possible and now charging all the way down here towards the Porsche curves. A small kink in the straight, of course, as he charges down towards the Porsche curves here, going up through the gears into sixth gear in the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo, and get him ready now to brake into the Porsche curves. Trail braking in hard here, coming down from 6th gear all the way down toward his 4th gear and just balancing the throttle before building up that confidence once again. Now flat out through the left-hander, going up into 5th gear, a short shift there in order to turn the car through, and now lifting off the throttle as he completes the Porsche curves here through the right-hand and gets ready for the Chevrolet curves as he goes into the left-hander, and as he makes his way through here, track limit so critical, he's going to use the full width of the circuit, and as he makes his way on out now through the right into left kink here, flat out, now heading into the final 4 corners, turns 30 through to 33, the Ford chicanes, there are 2 of them. Firstly, there is the medium speed chicane, which he makes his way into, braking at the pit entry, coming down to 3rd gear, trail braking across apex, and now braking once again down to 2nd gear and attacking the apexes of the final chicane, completing the lap. A very nice lap there by Paul Walton. Now, our rules for tonight, we'll quickly cover them. Our drivers will be running the iRacing low downforce, the fixed setup for tonight's race. As this is a super endurance round as well, there is no qualifying session or sprint race, and double points shall be rewarded in the feature race, albeit excluding fastest lap. The feature race, the grid shall be set by reverse drivers championship order based on the championship standings after the previous round, much like we saw in the feature race at Hungaroring, and the grid is organised by driver class, and all drivers are required to start the race in single file, with overtaking only permitted once the drivers have passed the start-finish line. Classes shall start approximately 2 seconds apart. The pros will start ahead of the AMs. Our drivers' starting fuel loads will be restricted to 70% for the start of the race to make sure our drivers have to take on fuel as part of the 2 mandatory pit stops. And our drivers must also change all 4 tyres at least once. Now, whether they change just the 2 front tyres in one pit stop and the 2 rears in a later stop, that's entirely up to our drivers, but they must change all 4 tyres at least once. And each driver has 2 fast repairs available. And you can see there the changed rules in the red text, and that's the different set of rules for the purposes of our super endurance race. But with that, we've covered everything. We now look to live pictures, ladies and gentlemen, as we are now only moments away from going racing indeed, as all of our drivers get ready to go is the case that we should introduce a newcomer who's joined us tonight. We've got a special guest driver, and that is Antonio Giovinazzi here, who is taking to the circuit in the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo, and he is taking part as a guest in the Pro class. So we are just going to get that updated for you to make sure that we do have him listed as a Pro, so you can keep track of how he's performing compared to the other Pros as well. It's only appropriate, but we are only 1.5 minutes away right now from going racing. Indeed, it couldn't be tenser for all of our drivers in terms of what they're expecting. And from speaking to a number of drivers down in the paddock in the build up to tonight, I haven't got any pre-race calls per se from any of our drivers, but a lot of our drivers really were nervous about this one. This race is a huge race for them in terms of the fact that if they get it right, the double points here will be worth volumes, but conversely, if they get it wrong, they could lose major momentum going into the Christmas break. And that's the big risk versus reward nature of this race tonight, is the fact that because we've got the Christmas break coming up, we do not have round number 7 next week. It's in 2 weeks' time. It means that the driver who has the best possible result tonight will go away on a high, and the driver who has the worst possible result, of course, will not be going away on a high, as we see right now Giovinazzi coming to the end of a practice lap and going on to one more, as we've got 30 seconds to go before we do indeed go racing. And we're going to check in with you guys and girls in the chat, and we can see there we do have a number of you tuning in, and that is fantastic to see. We have got what a fantastic group of you all tuning in as we're just waiting for our drivers to get racing now, and as we also bring up the circuit map here and also just bring up our sponsors' logos, of course, onto the screen. We can see there in what is the Facebook chat, we've got Mark Grant saying good luck, Paul Walton. We've also got Darren Doherty there saying in the YouTube, what chance of lift and coast? Well, yeah, I think it's going to be a challenging one. It's a long one tonight. It's a 2-stop, we believe. In fact, we've got a fantastic number of individuals here. We can see also Lerb there and Zeronic in the Twitch chat. We've got Titan Taylor as well in the YouTube chat. Plux the Duck in the YouTube chat. And right now we get ready to go racing, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're all doing well and that you're all staying in the best possible shape in the run-up to Christmas. And you're all feeling positive, as I certainly am, as we are about to go racing. So here is your grid for the first Super Endurance race of Lobby 2. William Foyle will take pole position in the Pro class ahead of Jamie Dory, Rick Jansen and Nathan Scott on the second row, Paul Williams and Lamont Wedder on the third row, Paul Scott and Nigel Stock on the fourth row, Stefan Albanese and Matthew Proutin on row number 5, Josh Wiggins and Michael Seale on row at number 6, and as we look outside our top 6 rows, Alistair Kirk and Dan Moorey completing row 7, Paul Walton and Gareth Williams, our 2 championship leaders, line up on row number 8, and Antonio Giovinazzi, our final Pro driver there because he is a guest, starts at the back of the Pro pack in P17. Paul Colburn, our lowest placed driver in the AM class, will start alongside Giovinazzi on row number 9, and then our 10th row is consisting of Jack Wyborn and Liam Tack. Travis Lindstrom Hatfield and Chris Keenan on what is row number 11, Mark Sykes and Darren Doherty on row number 12, and as all our drivers get ready to pull away right now, we can see it's the case that we then do have Elwyn Sykes and Gareth Mills on row number 13, Davide Fava and Mark Baker on row number 14, and Stefan Vessels on our 15th row right at the back of the field as we get going, and indeed we begin the partial formation lap for the rolling start. And remember, our drivers are required to form into a straight line. There is not to be side by side going through the final chicanes. It is the case that our drivers will be required to only start overtaking or looking at side by side moments when they've made their way across the start finish line. Now, I should also point out that with respect to this, when you see the lights go green, it is the case our drivers will not be going immediately. Our drivers have been told they are to only go racing once they have crossed the start finish line. We are not going when the safety car peels in, and that is for the purposes of safety, given how tight it is in the run down towards what is the final chicanes. Indeed, that could be leading to a number of incidents, but right now we will naturally see, and we can see Paul Colburn already doing this as he pulls away. It is the case that he's starting to fall back a little bit from the Pro drivers in front. He will open up a gap of approximately 2 seconds to provide that breathing room, and we will be going racing very soon. And we will be starting off, of course, with William Foyle, the Crest Autosport driver, who will take us away from what is the front of the Pro class here as he makes his way on through, as he comes all the way through the Chevrolet curves here, and everybody itching to go racing. You can see them all forming up into that single file formation already. Our drivers respecting the rules here and very aware of the rules that need to be applied, and we can see Benji Racing in the YouTube chat saying good luck everyone. Indeed, good luck to all of our drivers. This one is going to mean a lot, with 100 points up for grabs for the win, plus 5 points for the fastest lap. And now as our drivers make their way down towards the Ford chicanes, it will be for William Foyle to take us away in the Pro class, and it will be for Paul Colburn to take us away in the AM class. And you can see he has spaced out the field quite considerably here as they make their way on down. as he comes on down. We look to our leader right now, who is going to take us away, and it will be Foyle, as everybody now starts to build up a little bit of speed here, and the safety car peels away. And I believe it's the case that Foyle may have gone a little bit early there, but as they make their way out of what is the forward chicane here, it's the case that everybody able to go racing, and as they come charging across that start line, we can see all the drives safely on through in the Pro Class, and then further back it is the case that race gets underway for Paul Colburn and the rest of the AM Class, although I think we've had a little bit of a moment coming out of the chicane, and it does look as I think Liam Tack has had a bit of a moment coming out of the chicane, has fallen back quite considerably as they all make their way up. But meanwhile, we look to the Pro Class, I think Jamie Dory has had a major moment. In fact, Jamie Dory has, and Giovinazzi as well, into the wall. Now, I'm not sure what has happened there, but both drivers have had a major moment. But we look up towards the front of the Pro Class right now as they make their way through the right-hander of Tetra Rouge, and as they come on through and onto the Mulsanne straight, you can see it's the case that Foyle immediately lifting off there, I think, for track limit, as we see Rick Jansen takes the lead, and it is the case that all the drivers are now going to come on through. As you can see, Lambert Wedder immediately going on the offensive here. He's got past Paul Williams already, as we can see Paul Williams backing off as well, I think, for track limits. So that means Paul Scott is going to be promoted as all drivers come roaring on down. And a little bit further back, you can see now you've got Stefan Albanese here, who is at the head of a 5-wide pack as they make their way down towards what is the first of the chicanes. They come down towards that heavy braking zone, and we know that DRS eSport driver here, a very strong defensive driver, as he makes his way into the braking zone. But this time he decides not to, as we're hearing Liam Tack has gone to the pit, and we can see Joshua Wiggins having to defend versus Nigel Stock as they come on through and now go charging down towards what is the second part of Mulsanne now as they go roaring on down once again here, and we can see it's the case that everybody just sizing up one another as they come roaring on down that straight. Meanwhile, a bit further back, I can tell you that in the battle in the AM class right now, you can see Mark Baker there looking at an opportunity versus what is Elwyn Sykes. He's got Davide Favo just behind him. Mark Baker already gaining some ground as they make their way on through the corners right now. He's gained 3 places as he comes roaring down to the second part of Mulsanne, and you can see the snake trainer cars where everybody's trying to gain the slipstream of their fellow driver around them, and where it looks as though they're a little bit further up in the picture. Darren Doherty now trying to go side by side with Chris Keenan in the long run down the straight towards the second chicane. Now as he makes his way on down here, will Doherty be able to get ahead, or will Keenan take the advantage? We know how strong the BMW M4 is on the straights, but I think the Irishman has got it done here. In fact, Keenan tucking back in, as we can see here. It's the case that Mark Baker now chasing after Mark Sykes. He gets the move done on what was Elwyn Sykes there for P24 overall, and that is in class, P7 in class as it currently stands. But as we look from them back up towards our leaders right now in the Pro Class, we can see that Rick Jansen in the lead, as I believe that is Nathan J. Scott having to do a lift out there in the run out of what was the Mulsanne corner, and now heading down towards Indianapolis. And it is the case that Paul Scott is ahead, the Next Gen Racing driver, as they come roaring on down the straight, and as they make their way down. Of course, the lap here 4 minutes long, so whilst it is 2 hours, that 2 hours is going to fly by for these drivers. They won't be getting that many laps in around the circuit, but as they come roaring on in right now, each lap's going to be critical, and Paul Scott falling back here as they make their way into the heavy braking zone. Further back, however, I can tell you that it's the case that Chris Keenan, I think, has had a moment and had to do a lift off there because he has dropped out massively. But meanwhile, in the foreground of your picture, I can tell you that you've got Travis Linscombe Hatfield just ahead of Darren Doherty here as they make their way roaring down the straight, and that's Antonio Giovinazzi there, the pro driver who's returned to the circuit, and he's now finding himself in amongst the leading group of drivers in the AM class right now, and he's got to try and find his way on through. Of course, he won't be racing with these drivers for points, but it will be the case he's racing with them for overall track position. As you can see, Gareth Mills there tucking in behind, and as they make their way through Arnage right now, it is the case that as they come out of the corner, the F1 driver indeed needing to just find a little bit of inspiration and dig deep right now to get himself a pass where it's Darren Doherty ahead as they come roaring up towards what is the Porsche curves for the first time of asking. But as they make their way on through, we are hearing that Liam Tack, well, it's the case, it has gone very wrong for Liam Tack, and he is doing repair work to the car. But we look back up towards our overall leaders right now, we can see Rick Jansen ahead of Lambert Wedder as they start to make their way through what is the Ford chicanes for the first time of asking. But as they make their way on through, further back there, you can see it's the case that Paul Colburn's gone a little bit deep. Well, no, my apologies, that's not Paul Colburn, that's Nathan J. Scott who's gone a little bit deep. And as they come through, Nigel Stock battling here with what is Wiggins, 4P6. You can see a flash of lights there from Stock. Now, I wonder if he's feeling aggrieved at something. It does look as though Stock really trying to get that place in earnest. And further back, Alistair Kirk here, side by side already with what is Michael Seale here. The Ignium Motorsport Porsche is going to be on the inside of the Dunlop chicane, the first part. But Kirk getting the move done, but being boxed in there by Proughton as they make the way on through. And as they come up towards now what is the long sequence of course that head towards Tetra Rouge, we look further back to what is our AM class, and we can see it's the case that right now we have got Jack Wyborn who's leading the AM class and breaking away, and Jamie Dory ahead lifting off there. And I'm wondering whether Jamie Dory just letting him on through through and thinking about the wider picture, and it's going to be a very, very long race here for all of our drivers, as we are hearing that Giovinazzi is into the pits and Gareth Mills has had a moment as well. But after the opening lap, it is Lamont Wedder leading by 1.5 seconds over Paul Scott and Nathan J. Scott in the Pro Class. But Nathan J. Scott is under attack here from Joshua Wiggins as the two Porsche drivers go side by side down the Mulsanne straight here. Now the problem for the Porsches in particular is they lack the top end compared to the rest of the pack, and you can see Nigel Stock there tucked in behind right now in the Ford GT, the unicorn of a car, given the fact it's the only Ford GT we're seeing in this series. But as they make their way on through, it's the case that Wiggins takes the position, and we see that Nigel Stock tucks back in behind right now as the whole snake trail of cars make their way onto the second part of the Mulsanne straight, and behind William Foyle here, the Crest Autosport driver, trying to keep that pressure on as they're all trying to just get the right amount of tow in order to give them the overspeed. And you can see that Wiggins just putting the car right in the middle of the road in order to take away any opportunity in terms of drivers being able to get alongside. But as they make their way down towards the second chicane, it is the case that Wiggins has got that pressure from Scott, and behind you can see that Foyle trying to get the move on Nigel Stock. Stock gives him the space, but Foyle goes onto the apex curve in the entry to the chicane, and it bounces the car and takes a bit of the pace out of the machine as they now make their way down towards Mulsanne corner. Now meanwhile further back, I can tell you it's a situation whereby we do see in the AM class meanwhile Elwin Sykes having to lift off and let Mark Baker through. I'm wondering what's happened there. So it's a case the AM drivers are a little bit more spaced out compared to our pro drivers, but our pros really going at it, and we can see that Stock behind having to battle with what is Foyle, and then we've got Nathan Scott here who finds himself on the outside. He's got some pressure on his inside, and it's the case that Foyle, having got past Nigel Stock, now looks to get on through there. It didn't quite work out, as we do see that's Rick Jansen moving off to the side. I think Jansen has got a slow down there for running wide and track limits, but it is the case that he will tuck back into the back of this pack as they now make their way down towards Indianapolis for the second time of asking. Now as they come roaring on down here, we ride on board with Nigel Stock. To give you an idea, he's got to try and find a way to place himself amongst the two drivers ahead of him. Will he make it 3 wide down into Indianapolis? Surely not here so early on in the race. There's no need to take such a risk early on, or is there? As they come through, you can see it's the case that Foyle snakes as he makes his way to the left hand. He just keeps the car together. Oh my goodness, and Scott there, to be fair, that is brave from both drivers to go side by side, but particularly Scott, when he must have seen it was the case, was we oh goodness me, and that is Wiggins. Wiggins has got it wrong, and he's taken what is Alistair Kirk and also Nigel Stock with him, and that is a disaster for Joshua Wiggins and the drivers who are also impacted by that. What happened to Joshua Wiggins? Was he's making his way down into our large corner as they all came on through here. I think it's the case the RD Simsport driver's probably just gone in a bit too hard. Indeed, he's gone deep on the corner as he's gone to get on the throttle. You can see the dip in the road there, and that's caused the car to spin, and it was a passenger in a machine. But it is the case that it looks as though for the most part, all the drivers involved in that incident in the end, so Alistair Kirk and also Nigel Stock, they've been able to get away with it relatively unscathed. Probably some light damage on the cars. We're hearing that Rick Jansen has gone into the pit, and we are also hearing there's been a bit of an incident further down the order in terms of Davide Favo's had a moment running off circuit. But right now we look to the two marks, and that is Mark Baker in the rear, the Team Tetra Rouge driver, battling with the next gen orange driver Mark Sykes. He tries to go all the way around the outside, with Sykes going deep into the first of the two Porsche curves there, but it is the case Sykes holds the position for now as they make the way on through in towards the Corvette curves. And as they come on through here, we're hearing that Joshua Wiggins and Stefan Albanese into the pits. A number of drivers coming into the pits to repair damage most likely, but also are we seeing some very early pit stops in this race in order to try and get that opening pit stop out of the way. Remember, there are 2 stops in this race, 2 mandatory stops our drivers must deliver on, and right now, well, I do wonder whether we are seeing some drivers get that first pit stop done and dusted, as we can see Mark Baker having to continue to chase down Mark Sykes. The time it is Sykes goes deep there on the exit of the Ford chicanes, and as a result Baker is going to take the position, and that for Baker is now up to P5 in the AM class. As in terms of our order in the AM class as it currently stands after 2 laps, it's Jack Wyborn right now leading by the region of what is 8/10 of a second over Travis Linscombe Hatfield here. We can see the privateer from the United States hunting down Wyborn very rapidly, and then we've got Darren Doherty in P3 with Stefan Vessels, the fast charger of course, seeing this as an opportunity to extend his championship lead, trying to chase down Darren Doherty, and then Mark Baker a little bit further back here, the best part of 8 seconds back, but hunting down Vessels as quickly as possible. And Stefan Albanese there out of position. He did come into the pits, and it's the case the DRS Esport driver now making his way on through Tetra Rouge corner once again, and as he comes on through right now, I think it's the case that Albanese just needing to get his head down and look to try and catch back up to the pro pack, as otherwise you'll have Mark Sykes hunting him down. Indeed, Elwin Sykes a bit further back, the South African of Elwin Sykes battling with what is Gareth Mills. So the 2 South Africans will be going toe to toe, I'm sure, in a brief while, but right now I think Mills will be looking to stay in the slipstream with that Ferrari ahead of him, because he doesn't have the straight line speed on the straights, particularly in top gear versus the Ferrari as they make their way down towards the first chicane. But then again, I say that, you can see he's got the overspeed here, and it is the case. Well, we can see he's going to take the position. And I think Elwyn Sykes had decided to lift off and simply tuck in behind and use that as a brief fuel-saving opportunity, and also to do a little bit of tyre-saving. As my goodness, is that Mark Baker off circuit there? That's Mark Baker into the wall there at the first chicane. Now, what has happened to Mark Baker? This circuit already proven to be a nightmare for a number of drivers as Alistair Kirk comes on through. Let's take a look back at what happened to the Team Tetra Rouge driver. So he was making his way down into the braking zone for what was the first Mulsanne chicane. As he came on through, did he lose the rear end here? Well, it looks as though the rear just stepped out as he tried to turn the car through to the left-hander, and Baker just into the wall there, and a rather rare mistake from Mark Baker, you have to say, but I think it's the case that right now Mark Baker will recover from that and he will bounce back from it. But still, we've got plenty of the race to go. We've still got the best part of what is 110 minutes to go. It's not as though this race is over yet by any means, but we are starting to get some gaps filling in our field, in our 29 car field, as we can see that Nathan J. Scott, meanwhile in P4, he's holding on to that P4, but he's going for the move versus William Foyle here, and these two have been battling non-stop. It's TGC Racing in the form of Scott versus Crest Autosport in the form of Foyle, and as they come on through, you can see Scott goes to the cut back there. He can't quite find it this time, but he's definitely looking each and every time for that opportunity. But the snake train of cars that is now following this pack of drivers as they make their way on through is a sight to behold, because of the fact that if one mistake is made by the top two in this battle, you can imagine that the three behind or the four behind it could be at the rate it's going. We can see Paul Walton there looking ominous in P8. It will be the case that effectively that one mistake could cost these drivers dearly, as we ride on board the gearbox here of William Foyle in P3 as he makes his way into the Porsche curves here. And you can imagine Foyle has to do this in clear air. He gets the best possible run through these corners in the Audi R8, whereas the Porsche behind him are Scott and also Michael Seale's Porsche there and Dan Moorey in the Porsche. They will all have the dirty air to contend with on the front air, and you can see that Scott goes wide there into the Corvette curves, and as he makes his way on out, it is the case, well, he's been able to hold the position, but now Nathan Scott is going to be under pressure, and Seale immediately comes on through here. He knows this is time to shine, and I don't think Scott's going to fight this one too hard initially, but he's only going to let one of them through surely, because if he lets all of them through, he's going to fall down the order like a stone as they make their way through the Ford chicanes once again. Now as they come on through here, you can see the difference in line. Scott taking a much tighter exit line compared to Seale and gaining a lot of momentum by doing so, but as they make their way across the timing line once again, completing their third lap and onto lap 4, it is the case that right now the fastest man out on circuit as it currently stands is William Foyle. He's just at the fastest lap of the race, a 3:57.182, and to give you an idea of how fast that is, he is one of only two drivers to set a 57 right now, the other driver being our championship contender in the pro class, out of our top two contenders, and that is Paul Walton, who is now chasing after this pack as he makes his way down in towards what is the run to Tetra Rouge corner. Now as they come on through here, we can see how much Walton has closed up, and of course in that reference lap he provided us with, we saw just how much pace he had at his fingertips in his Lamborghini. The RD Simsport team really worked hard to bring that machine together for this weekend, and he goes a bit wide. He's got to be careful of running wide because he will be given a slowdown penalty if he does that too much, and that's what a number of drivers have been burned with already. As meanwhile we can see that Mark Sykes here chasing after Elwyn Sykes, and I can assure you they're not brothers, they just both have the same surname, but it is the case that right now the Englishman chasing down the South African and trying to get close, but he went a bit deep there on the exit of the Dunlop chicane, and as a result he has lost out considerably as he makes his way on through. But going from one mark to another, one driver who's really lost out with the one mistake he did make down Mulsanne earlier on, Mark Baker, right now he's all the way down in P10 in class. He's got a long way to go, however, as meanwhile I can tell you that Stefan Wessels is battling side by side with Jack Wyborn right now, and this is a battle for what is P2 in the AM class, and this shows you how quickly the Racing Team Astra driver has come on through the order, and Wyborn just tucking in here and not fighting this one too hard. He knows there's more race at his fingertips later on. There's no need to battle it right now. I think Wessels also flying. Indeed, Stefan Wessels, his best lap has been a 57. And it's a case that he is showing a lot of pace in that Ferrari as he now hunts down Matthew Prouting, the pro driver ahead of him, as they make their way down towards what is the second of the chicanes. Now as they come on through, there were some incidents on the opening lap, and particularly in the run through what was the Dunlop chicane. We saw an incident involving Jamie Dory, and we're going to try and bring that back to you very shortly as we see Wessels there making the move on Matthew Prouting, who decided he didn't like that cone being there on the run into the Mulsanne chicane and got rid of that cone instead. But as they make their way on through, it's a case Vessel gains the place, and I think Prouting there just deciding, you know what, there's no need to fight this for the simple reason that if they fight, they lose time to the drivers up front, and right now you'd have to imagine that Travis Linscombe Hatfield will be seeing Stefan Vessels come roaring after him, and to be fair to the American, he is putting in a very consistent performance so far, albeit in this early stage of the race. That is one of those situations where I think for him the pressure will now feel all too real, as we can see that Jack Wyborn has also come on through past Matthew Prouting, who seems to be struggling at this point in the race and falling backwards to a degree with the rate at which the AMs are passing the BMW driver in the Pro class. But perhaps Prouting's running a lot more fuel. Well, no, he can't be running more fuel. Perhaps he's trying to save the car a lot more compared to the other drivers around him. Perhaps there's an alternate strategy, or perhaps he just is struggling for pace. Or indeed, it is the case that right now his best lap, in fact, I think it's the damage on the car. My apologies, ladies and gentlemen. It is the damage on the car, because his best lap has been a 4:12 today. And I think Prouting really just not in a happy place in this race right now, and he doesn't want to come into the pits to make it a 3-stop race. It's only mandatory 2 stops, and having to do an extra pit stop to repair damage is of course a brutal situation to be in as he makes his way on through. And as he comes out of Arnage right now, you can see the next driver closing up to him is Darren Doherty as they come roaring down towards the Porsche curves once again. But as we look from them to a bit further down the order, we can see that Davide Favo right now hunting down Mark Baker as they make their way down through in towards Indianapolis here, and it is the case Davide Favo coming through at the left-hander, and as they make their way through, Mark Baker just stepping out there, the rear right-hand tyre in particular just going a little bit beyond the curve, and as a result it's one of those situations where he's had to put some corrective steering in. And meanwhile, whilst this is all going on, I can tell you that Paul Walton is to continue to come up through the field. He's just made the pass on what was Dan Moorey for P6 in class and P6 overall, and it is the case that Walton is flying right now. He's even found his way past Gareth Williams, who's behind, but remember, Gareth Williams, our championship leader right now in that battle with Walton. I think Williams will be playing the long game here. He'll know he just needs to stay in this pack. He doesn't need to be the leader of it at this point in the race, but we'll wait to see. It could be a different approach from the two drivers. Williams might be running to a defiant pace. Walton may be racing to the logic of, I've got to get ahead of everyone as soon as possible. Two different approaches. We're hearing Matthew Prouting is into the pits with the damaged BMW machinery, and Stefan Albanese into the pits as well, as our drivers coming through and on to what is lap number 5. And we see Walton right now really building a charge as he heads into Tetra Rouge. Now, as we check into the chat with you guys and girls, we can see that we've got quite a few of you there, and it looks as though we've got Antonio Visconti there in the YouTube chat saying, "Go Stefan, stay far from the curves," and I believe he's referring to Stefan Albanese, who is currently in the pits. In fact, he's just pulling into his pit box right now, and as he makes his way on in, it is the case that Davide Favo will gain a position or two as a result of Albanese and Prouting being in the pits. But looking from them to the battle down the straight here, down towards the Mulsanne chicane, you can see that Paul Walton, he's got himself ahead of Scott in the slipstream train. But now will we see the places reversed once again as they go down the second part of the Mulsanne straight, and ahead of them Michael Seale, who will be very aware of the fact he's only got 1.2 second advantage over Walton, and he will be getting that distance over Walton off of the back of Seale's Porsche as they make their way down towards the second chicane. Now for Walton, what he needs to do here, he's got to make that break from the Porsches behind him, and I think he has got a good opportunity here. You can see how much of a gap he's opened up coming out of the first chicane. You see Dan Moorey behind Scott, they're just snaking around a little bit trying to look for that opportunity, and Moorey looks for it as we can see Scott comes in very heavy on the brakes there. Nathan Scott, and my goodness, what a move from Nathan Scott. I think Walton, to be fair, had to open the steering wheel to give him the space to come through, but Nathan Scott coming from quite far back, and that was a brilliant move for what is back up into P5. Let's take a look back at how that played out. Right on board here, you can see he comes in with a lot of speed. He comes in like a bullet there, Nathan J. Scott, as he made his way on through, got the car back together, and that was some very impressive, tidy work on the brake. But as he's made his way now through the Mulsanne corner, he's gone very deep there, and I think Nathan Scott now could be vulnerable to a comeback here from Walton, Moorey and Williams. But to be fair, Seale is now only a second away from the pack of 4 chasing him, so I think it's the case the number 57 driver may be feeling a little bit of pressure breathing down his neck as he makes his way down towards what is Indianapolis once again. But as he comes roaring on down meanwhile, and they make their way down the straight, we can see a little bit further down the order in terms of battles right now. We've got Colburn closing up to the back of Baker, but we focus here, and Walton right now going for the move on the inside to outside line here into Indianapolis. Is he going to go all the way round, or is Scott going to make it difficult? Scott is going to make it difficult. Walton takes 2 wheels to the gravel then as they come down to Arnage. They're side by side into the braking zone, and the gloves are starting to come off already. They're giving each other racing room, but you can see Walton's got the move done, and now Dan Moorey sees this is an opportunity to try and gain the position as well. He's already got ahead in the drag race up towards the Porsche curves, and you can see Gareth Williams, I think, now realising, you know what, I've got to hunt Walton down. Walton's going to try and break away from this. I can't just stay at the back of this pack and enjoy the view. It is the case, he's got to start to move, and as the next gen racing driver makes his way into the Porsche curves here, no move this time, and I think now Walton will try to make the break, as we're hearing that Giovinazzi is into the pits once again, having a difficult day at the office. But meanwhile, it's one of those situations where I think a number of drivers have had a difficult one. In fact, we've heard that Alistair Kirk has had a moment off circuit only moments ago, and as we look from this battle here to Alistair Kirk, what has happened to the Briton? Well, right now he's got Mark Sykes behind him, but let's take a look back and see what triggered on our sensors to say that he'd had an incident. Did he get it wrong here into Indianapolis? I think he may have. Has the rear stepped out under braking into left-hander? It has indeed, and well, he's collected the car and he's parked it very nicely. In fact, Kurt got the car stopped to go racing once again. But that is why we can see that Mark Sykes has closed up so rapidly in that sequence of corners. But meanwhile, looking from one pro to another pro who's having a bit of a difficult time, we can see a Nigel Stock chasing down Jamie Dory right now in the battle for what is P9 overall and P9 in class. We ride on board here with Stock as he goes hunting after Dory. The Audi R8 ahead of him right now will be stronger through the corners, but not on the straights as they come through in towards the Dunlop chicane. You can see Stock lifting off very early there, not wanting to be too close under braking to the back of Dory as they come through the Dunlop chicane. A smart move there, of course, making sure not to get too close, and as they make their way now down into the right-hander of turn number 4. Turn number 5, I should say, and now come into left into right chicane sequence. Oh, goodness me, and I believe that is Seale. I think that's Michael Seale who's had an off there, and whoa, goodness me, what has happened to Michael Seale, who was at the time running in P4 in class? Was there an incident involving Seale and some of the drivers behind him? Let's take a look. Well, Seale had already dropped behind them and got it wrong there into left-hand, and now I'm not sure what has happened to Michael Seale, but it is the case that he's lost out considerably, and going for the spin there, well, it is a disaster for Seale, who now is down to P10, has let a lot of drivers through as a result. But it's the case the Ignium Motorsport driver will need to get his head back in the game and start to build that momentum once again, as meanwhile further back we can see the battle for the AM lead now kicking off as Linscombe Hatfield has got Stefan Vessels on his inside into the first of the chicanes. They make their way through chicane number 1 down the Mulsanne, and it is the case Hatfield not battling this one too hard. Now will he be able to come back? Well, he's left a lot of space between himself and Vessels. If he is going to come back, he will start to gain on the straight here, but I think it is the case he's left it very, very far away in terms of being able to slipstream back. I think Hatfield had a poor run through the chicane, and Vessels into lead right now, and I think the South African at this point will be thinking to himself, right, I've got the lead, just run away with this and run the race to perfection. We'll have to wait and see whether the racing team Astra driver does do that. Of course, we've got a long way to go. We've still got the best part of 98 minutes as it currently stands, but meanwhile, as Vessels makes his way around, he'll be just thinking about trying to take it one step at a time, as meanwhile, talking about taking it one step at a time, Paul Walton has been taking it one step at a time and building his way up through the order, and we can see up into P4 right now. He has found his way past Moorey, Scott, Williams and Seale. Of course, Seale having that off. We didn't quite see what triggered the initial sort of drop of positions from Seale, only that he did go off the circuit at turn number 5, but you can see that Walton unable to shake Moorey, as meanwhile behind Scott versus Williams here, and this is critical for Williams because he can see Walton is running away in the distance. They make the way down towards Indianapolis here. They've got the right hander before the left braking zone, and as they come on in right now, you can see that it's going to be Williams who goes around the outside here. Scott not keeping his nose in, and I think recognising, does the TGC racing driver, that if he wants to stay in that hunt for that potential P4 if not higher, he needs to avoid battling too hard, and I think instead it's a bit of a mutual agreement. He's going to let Williams take that position for the time being, as meanwhile Walton has started to make the break for Moorey. That gap up to 1.2 seconds here, and he did have Moorey all over the back of him only moments ago, but it looks like Walton now making that break, and the next driver to go for him to chase after is William Foyle, who is the best part of 5.4 seconds up the Warwick Road. But Walton right now lapping very quickly, but to be fair to William Foyle, he has been putting in absolutely staggering laps, and the best lap of this race so far has been a 3:56.42 as set by this man, and well, in terms of his last lap, a 3:57.67 versus Walton a 3:58.1. I can imagine that Foyle will need to up the gas when he wants to, but it will be one of those situations where I think Walton is going to have to really chase race down the Britain as they make their way towards the end of lap number 6. Now, as they come on through a bit further back, we can see that Dan Moorey now has had to let Williams through. We can see Williams have flashing his lights. Now, I'm wondering if it was the case, perhaps there was a slowdown, or instead Moorey just simply getting it wrong, as Moorey goes very heavy on the brakes. I'm not sure what's happened to Moorey. He must have had a track limits runoff or a track limits slowdown, because him backing off there and letting Scott through as well, I think is a sign of something has gone wrong, and it's not necessary on the car. We can't see any visible damage on the car, and we're not hearing anything on our data sheets to say that he's been involved in an incident, but Moorey losing out multiple positions, as meanwhile further back I can tell you that Nigel Stock's still trying to chase down and get past Jamie Dorey here. And these two, well, here's the situation right now. They are as they were a lap ago, literally nose to tail as they go through Dunlop. But this time, Stock a little bit closer on exit, not losing out as much, and still trying to close up to the back of this battle as they head down through turns 4, 5, and 6, and 7. Now, as they make their way on through, and meanwhile, it is the case that in the AM class, we can see that Stefan Vessel's closing up to the back of Paul Williams right now. Our AM class leaders trying to make that breakaway from Linscombe Hatfield is only a second back. And in terms of lap times right now, it's the case that Vessels is the faster of the two drivers over the course of the lap. It would seem that the momentum's going his way, but to be fair to Vessels, it's one thing to get into the lead, it's another thing to completely make that break, and we'll see what happens. But meanwhile, coming back to Stock, we can see the Ford GT driver now looking for that move versus the Next Gen Racing driver Jamie Dorey as they head down towards the first of chicanes, and as they make the way down the long straight here. And in the rear view picture, you can see Williams versus Vessels. It is the case that Stock not looking for the move once again. But what about Vessels versus Williams? It's the case the two Ferrari drivers come into the braking zone and Williams backs off there. Paul Williams deciding, you know what, there's no need to fight. Let's just run behind and use Vessels to pull me along on the next part of the straight. As they make their way on down and the field having opened up to a degree, I think it is the case that right now the field is all starting to move into that strategic phase. We're almost at the end of the first half now. We're almost at the end of the first quarter of this race. And whilst the field is not as heavily clustered together as perhaps we would love to see at this point in time, albeit there's a little bit of sporadic battle here and there, I think it's now waiting to see how the pit stops play out from our drivers. As we have, by the looks of things, had two retirements in this race. We have lost Antonio Giovinazzi and also Rick Jansen. But our last runner at the moment is Liam Tack here in the privateer machine, the Martini Williams Racing liveried Ferrari, their lovely livery on the car, and Tack soldiering on right now and coming up to being, I believe, what is a lap down our leaders in short order, with Lammett Wedder right now 6.5 seconds back. That is the case in terms of our leaders, a driver who we haven't talked about for some time. Lammett Wedder here, the Dutchman, the Team Racing Netherlands driver, putting in a strong performance as it currently stands as he makes his way down towards what is the right-hand opener for Indianapolis, and as he comes on down into the braking zone, we can see the Dutchman doing a very good job right now. He does have Paul Scott chasing down, and these two exchanging lap times as if it's going out of style, with the idea that Paul Scott right now is just matching the lap time, if not a little bit slow. He was slow by 4 attempts on the previous lap versus Wedder. Meanwhile, behind, William Foyle really building that momentum and trying to hunt down the leaders, and you can see it is the case. He is closing, but look in the rear view picture, you can see Paul Walton and Gareth Williams also closing on the leaders as they make their way down towards the Porsche curves here. And of course, it's the case for our top three in the Pro class right now, top three out on the circuit in terms of track position. They will not want to lose out on an opportunity to finish on the podium, if not take the win here at Le Mans. It will be so important to them. As meanwhile, talking about importance, we can see it's the case that the importance of getting past Nigel Stock for Michael Seale is that he begins his campaign back up the field after the incident on a couple of laps ago at turn number 5 into 6, and in this case he's going to look to the inside here as they make their way into the Porsche curves, but he's not got enough momentum, and in fact Seale has to back off in the end and let Stock retake the position as they now make their way through the Porsche curves and head after Jamie Dorey up towards the Corvette curves as they come through into the right into left sequence. But you can see still able to carry so much more speed through these corners, which we would expect given the Porsche is a much lighter car and not as power dominated, and according to the BOP it is the car that works best through the corners. As we see him give chase, we see another Porsche giving chase, and that is Dan Moorey here, the Altitude Esports driver, who making his way through the Ford chicanes right now, trying to build this race back up after a number of slowdowns, it would seem, the Altitude Esports driver, and we ride on board with Dan Moorey as he hunts down Scott for what is P6 here as they go across that timeline and onto lap number 8. Now, as they make their way on through, it is the case as they come charging through the corners, and we are seeing that a number of questions in the chat with regards to Antonio Giovinazzi, what happened to the driver. Well, it is the case that Giovinazzi, I believe, had a number of incidents or off circuits, and we will try to give you an update on the information, but he has retired from this race, unfortunately, so we will not be seeing him grace the Le Mans circuit anymore today, as I'm to understand, but I believe it was a number of off-track moments that happened to Giovinazzi, and in particular the last one was as follows. And this was down at turn number 5, where he's put the rear right-hand tyre on to the gravel going into the corner, and eventually when the car stopped he made his way back onto the circuit. We'll reversed it back onto the circuit, but I think at this point it led to the retirement, albeit that's what I'm being informed. Indeed, that's when he jumped to the pits and his race came to an end. So unfortunately we do have lost Giovinazzi and also Rick Jansen, who we lost earlier on due to damage to the car, and well, that is a shame of course of both drivers who were looking to try and get a good result here at Le Mans. But all the same, as we can see that Paul Coburn, meanwhile, down in P20 overall, that is P7 in class, as he makes his way on through right now, and in a bit of a no man's land at this point in time, trying to catch up to Matthew Prouty, 6.5 seconds ahead, and break away from Josh Wiggins, 13.7 seconds behind, albeit both of those drivers in the Pro class. And really, Coburn is chasing down Davide Favo, who is the best part of 11.5 seconds up the road right now. But as Coburn makes his way through Tetra Rouge once again, we look a bit further up order. We can see that Nigel Stock once again battling with Michael Seale as they go into the second chicane of Mulsanne. You can see that Stock being passed there by Michael Seale in the drag race into the braking zone. And I think Stock, as he makes his way on through here, just waiting for that opportunity to come back. But quite a sizable gap back right now as he makes his way down towards the Mulsanne corner here, not working out. As we can see it there also in the chat, in the YouTube chat, it's the case that Pedro the Natty saying Paul Coburn quicker than Alistair Kirk. Well, it would seem that at the moment it may be that situation indeed, as we can see it, Nigel Stock not able to gain here on Michael Seale as they make their way through at the Mulsanne corner. But meanwhile, further up front, I can tell you drivers who are gaining, and William Fowl continue to gain here on Paul Scott, as we're hearing that Chris Keenan has had a moment on circuit and has just been passed by Gareth Mills. But we can see that William Fowl closing up. But let's take a look back at what's happened to the Belgian Chris Keenan only moments ago. I think it's going to be a similar situation here, coming down into turn number 5. Do we see him get it wrong under braking? In fact, this time it's not a case of putting a wheel onto the grass, it's just losing the rear end, locking the rear brakes up, and the car carrying around and carrying him like a passenger as the privateer goes racing once again. Now, that was Gareth Mills coming through to take what is P24 overall and P10 in the AM class, as we see the GM Racing driver right now making his way down towards what is the first of the chicanes on Mulsanne. But meanwhile, we look from them back to our battle for P2 overall. And it's the case that William Fowl carrying as much momentum as he dare do as they go through what is the Porsche curves and head into the Corvette curves once again. And as they make their way into left-hander here, it is a situation that we can see Fowl really trying to mount as much pressure as possible here, but he's not able to get close enough at this point. And I think it is that BMW power just keeping things alive for the time being for Scott as they make their way through the Ford chicanes. They come on through, and to be fair to Paul Scott, he will be pushing to his utmost in order. Hold on a second. We're hearing that Linscombe Hatfield has had a major moment out on circuit, and we can see Linscombe Hatfield has dropped down to P14. And that is P3 in the AM class, and ahead of him now is Darren Doherty. What has happened to the American? Well, this was only moments ago coming down into Indianapolis, and as he lost the car on the run into the left-hander, as he came on through the corner, you can see the rear starting to step out, and Paul Williams there just simply having to keep his foot in and go around, and that is what happened to Hatfield, as I believe Hatfield has had another moment as well, as Darren Doherty there had to take evasive action, and Hatfield into the wall there on the exit of the Corvette curves. I think it may be a similar situation, and that's the thing about the Le Mans circuit. One mistake can set off a chain reaction, and for Linscombe Hatfield, that chain reaction has now occurred as we look back to what happened moments ago. And he was chasing after Darren Doherty at the time, and as they made the way for a left-hander, we're going to see him lose the rear end through here. We are indeed just simply raised the car up a bit too much on the inside curb with the left-hand wheel, and as a result the front left-hand wheel and into the wall as the rear came round. That's very unfortunate for the American as he now makes his way into the pits, and I think this will be bringing forward a scheduled stop, and it may see him have to do a lot of repair work on the car. Well, definitely after that hit into the wall. But what this does mean that right now, as William Fowl has in fact found his way up into P2 versus Paul Scott, this will start to open up the podium for the AM class quite considerably. Darren Doherty up into P2 in the AM class, and then it is Mark Sykes who's moved up into P3 as he makes his way now through the Dunlop chicane once again. And the next gen racing orange driver at this point will be looking a bit further forward now and be thinking, how can he potentially close down Darren Doherty and Stefan Wessels? Well, I think Wessels is a long way away. I think it's more about trying to close down Darren Doherty, who is the best part of what is 27 seconds up the road. And I think Sykes will also be aware of the fact he's got Elwyn Sykes trying to hunt him down as he makes it. Oh, goodness me, and Sykes, they're getting it wrong on the exit out of the chicane that precedes Tetra Rouge. And by getting it wrong in such a manner, that's a lot of damage. And a number of drivers now starting to make these mistakes, and we thought Sykes there was on his path to a potential P3 at that point in the race, and as soon as we said it is the case, he has had an incident, and that means that Elwyn Sykes now is up into P3 in the AM class. The commentator's curse, it would seem, is striking already, and I do apologise for that. It is the case that we can't control the commentator's curse, it just seems to occur, but right now Elwyn Sykes up into P3 in the AM class, and Matthew Prouting just ahead, P14 overall, and Prouting P12 in the Pro class. And I think Prouting having one of those races well, after doing the repair work on the car, in fact, he's been lapping quite quickly in the low 57s. And I think Prouting now going to work in trying to recover something from this race, as we are seeing our opening pit stops. Davide Favo into the pits, for example, as well. We have had a number of pit stops occur, but we've still got the majority of our drivers, particularly the leaders, who've yet to make their opening pit stop. And it's particularly our top 12. Well, yes, it is our top 12 who have yet to pit. So literally from Darren Doherty upwards, it is the case none of these drivers have pitted. And then Alistair Kirk is the first driver to have pitted in this race, or the lead driver who has made an opening pit stop, as we are now waiting to see how it all plays out later on as Nigel Stock presses on. But meanwhile, with Nigel Stock pressing on, we look a bit further up the order and we can see that, Darren Doherty presses on. It is the case that Nigel Stock is trying to chase after what is Michael Seale here as they make their way down towards Arnage once again as they come through the right-hander. No change between these two at this time. And we can see Greg B there saying that Mills has just dropped from P15 to P25. And we will take a look at that very shortly for you in regards to what has happened there, Greg. I think it is the case that Gareth Mills, well, he's... My apologies, I think Gareth Mills, he's dropped all the way down to P23. We can't see anything on our data screen to say that an incident has occurred involving Mills, but I think Mills has made a pit stop, and that would explain it. He has made a pit stop, and that pit stop has led to him dropping down the order, I believe. But right now, Stock not able to gain, as we can see our race leaders into the pit. So it's the case, we are seeing our opening pit stops now occur from our leaders, as Mark Baker has had a moment out on circuit. And where's Mark Baker got it wrong? He's got it wrong on the exit of Mulsanne corner. As you can see, Linscombe Hatfield coming on through here and taking a bit of evasive action, and Baker's keeping it calm to stay clear. But we look to the pit lane right now as everybody in. Lambert Wedder, of course, our leader, William Ford behind him, Paul Scott and also Paul Walton there. Now, who's going to have the short stop here? Who's going to have the long stop? Now, I can imagine that Paul Walton in particular, he will look to try and make this pit stop as short as possible. He wants to gain places. Everybody has come in, though. Literally all the pros have come in, and Stefan Wessels at the rear of your picture is coming as Paul Williams stays out, and it will be Paul Williams who now takes on the lead of this race as he makes his way on through onto another lap. But we look to the pit lane meanwhile, and nobody coming out at this point in time. Everybody in, as we are just waiting to see what happens here. But meanwhile, a bit further back, Josh Williams has passed Mark Sykes, and there we can see that's Lambert Wedder coming out first and foremost, and Michael Seale behind him. Seale is going to jump multiple places here, as meanwhile Alistair Kirk comes on through and goes up into P2. And Alistair Kirk, having made one pit stop already, will he have two more stops to do, or just the one? That is a big question. But Alistair Kirk has jumped up the order. You can see William Ford immediately reacting to this. He's not happy that he's been jumped by Seale. And indeed, looking further back, Paul Walton having one of the longer stops of the group. And I think Walton has decided that he's going to go for his longer stop now and go for the shorter stop later. We'll wait and see. But this field chopping and changing quite rapidly, as we can see that William Foyle right now will need to go to work on trying to close down Seale as quickly as possible, because this is not going to... You see he's already flashing his lights, I think, to try and distract him with some sort of distant Morse code as they make their way out of Tetra Rouge and now down onto the Mulsanne Straight, and Foyle very close as they come roaring on down here, and as they make their way now onto the main straight. We look to the blimp cam here as they come roaring on down. You can see in the rear of your picture there, you do have Paul Scott as well, and it is the case that Foyle's got the overspeed as they make their way down towards the braking zone, and as they come on in under braking very shortly, it'll be the case. I think Steele's going to tuck back in. He hasn't got the speed to come back, all the brakes to be able to extract the leverage he needs, and as they come on through, it's Foyle back up in position, but a bit of damage has been done, and that is the fact that Lambert Wedder is now 1.1 seconds away, whereas Foyle would have been hopeful. He's 4.8 seconds away, I should clarify, not 1.1 seconds away, and I think it'll be the case that Foyle would have been hoping he would have been a lot closer with all this happening. Further down the order, I can tell you that Jamie Dorey has got alongside inside and just got past what is Scott there, and that is Nathan Scott. He's just passed. He's up into P11 is Jamie Dory, as Scott is tucked in behind, and a bit further down the order even so, we are hearing that Jack Wyborn has just found his way past Elwyn Sykes, so it's P19. That is P5 in the AM class here, and it is the case that everybody now, minus our race leader, has made a pit stop, and our race leader, of course, Paul Williams. Well, I think the Team Tetra Rouge driver at this point will be thinking to himself that things are going quite smoothly now. What is his plan? That is the big question, because at this point in the race, given our drivers have started on 70% fuel tanks, it will be the case that he can probably take the car a little bit further, as meanwhile Michael Seale here battling with what is William Foyle down into Mulsanne corner. This is the battle for P4, and the thing is, these guys, the more they battle, Wedder is just going to be given the opportunity to break away. You can see in the foreground here of your picture, it's Kirk and Wedder being running away, and then we've got Seale versus Foyle here. And the Ignium Motorsport driver still knows he needs to stay ahead of Foyle. He cannot let this go, because if he does, he's going to see that over the course of the remainder of the pit stops, Foyle will just break away. And Seale is coming back here with absolute fever as they make the way down in towards Indianapolis. And you can see behind them Paul Scott looking for that opportunity as they make their way through the right-hander. And as they come on through, it is the case. It will Foyle holds on to position for now, but this is costing them dearly as they make their way out of the corner in towards Arnage. And as they come breaking on down right now, we can see it's a situation where Foyle, I think, just having to work as much as he can in order to hold on. But Seale there once again on the exit of Arnage. It looks as though Seale has an answer to everything Foyle does in the corners. It's the straights where the Audi just seems to have a little bit more punch, but Seale just knowing where to get that Porsche to deploy its strengths, and he's making it work as they head up into the Porsche curves here. And I think it's going to be the case the Porsche driver is going to take the lead, as you can see. Walton just behind there. He's going to try and go around the outside as Paul Walton. This is brave stuff, but meanwhile we can see that Foyle holding on as Walton does go for the switch back there from outside to inside, and Walton moves up to P6 versus Paul Scott. And as they make their way now through into the Corvette curves here, this is intensifying somewhat as Paul Williams is into the pits from the lead. And I think it's the case that Rene tried to take the car as far as possible. Walton running a little bit wide there. And we can see it's the case that Foyle is now going to be sandwiched. He's got Walton on one side, he's got Seale on another, and Seale into the pits. Goodness me, what's happened to Michael Seale here? Well, Seale has already made one pit stop. He's in again now. Surely not. It's not a case they've done something wrong in the pits for Seale. That is going to absolutely destroy his race. As meanwhile, Paul Walton here has had to lift off, and that will be a slowdown for running wide coming out the Corvette curves. We saw him run wide, which means Foyle will be released, and Paul Scott, meanwhile, will now be up to P4. But that is a shock to the system for Seale, surely. He can't be going for his second stop this early in the race, or if he is, that is a very bold and brave a move to pit so soon. We'll have to wait to see how it all plays out, much like what you said there in the chat, Greg B, as all our drivers continue around. But right now, the intensity of this race is starting to build up as that strategic element, and knowing which pit stops are the scheduled stops and which ones are unscheduled, and where we're seeing additional stops being made by our drivers. But whilst all this is happening, I can tell you that Gareth Mills, he did drop down the order, but Gareth Mills is now starting to build up some momentum as he goes hunting after Elwyn Sykes here. We ride on board with the GM Racing driver as he hunts down his fellow countrymen in the pursuit of what is P20 overall and P6 in the AM class as they come through at the Corvette curves. Now you can see the difference here where Mills has had a much better run. In fact, I think he's going to go for the move here as they emerge, and it is the case. Well, I think Elwyn Sykes had to back off the throttle there and actually put the brake on the exit to avoid running wide and picking up a slowdown, as we are hearing that Paul Williams is now making his way out of the pits. And Williams, with that longer opening stint, has dropped all the way down to P17, P14 in class. Now, what is the Team Tetra Rouge driver plan? I think he's trying to go long on his... Well, he's gone long in his opening stint. I think he's going to try and go long on his second stint and then have a short final stint where he's in essentially a qualifying mode. We'll have to wait and see. But to be fair to him, right now he's got a bit of clear track to utilise the car in its current condition. And we can see that Mark Baker, meanwhile, trying to get past Linscombe Hatfield. And this is critical to Baker, because of course Baker P2 in the AM Championship right now. He will want, if he can't win compared to Stefan Vessels, he'll want to finish as close as possible behind, and that is a P2 position, because Vessels right now would take 100 points, whereas Baker would take a few less points. As we are hearing, there is the case that Mark Sykes said about, in fact, not 100 points. My sincere apologies. We've changed from last year, from last season. It's now 50 points for the win, and we can see it that right now Mark Baker battling side by side here with Linscombe Hatfield in the run down towards the first of the chicanes, and as they make their way through into the braking zone. Baker gets in the move done very succinctly there. Now Will Linscombe-Hatfield try to come back at him in the run down towards the second chicane as they make that one through. We ride on board the gearbox of Mark Baker here, and you can see that Lamborghini Huracan in the distance right now. Be prepared for it to inch ever closer. It's going to be gradually resized on your screen. It's going to get larger and larger as he gets closer and closer, and as they make the way, they're halfway down the stretch in towards the second braking zone. Will Linscombe-Hatfield try to go for the move here. I think he's backed off on the throttle. He knows he's too far back to go for a move unless he's going to lunge it late, and instead the American is doing some fuel saving as they come on through the second of the chicanes and then make their way down towards the Mulsanne corner. But whilst this is happening, I can tell you that we have had an incident involving Mark Sykes. It is the case the AM driver into the pits. What has happened to the Englishman? Well, I think Mark Sykes has got it. He's in the wall there. And I think Mark Sykes had a major moment coming out of the Porsche curves into the Corvette curves. Let's try and take a look back at what happened only moments ago. So as he's making his way through the Porsche curves, ran deep there, understeered off circuit, and the car straight lined. But he brought the car back together and then clipped the wall. And I think it's the case the Next Gen Racing Orange driver. There's something wrong with the car, and now that whatever was wrong with the car has now been amplified by a factor of 3 or 4, given the collision to the wall. And Mark Sykes' race is going from good to bad to worse. As meanwhile, Nigel Stocker's also had a major moment out on circuit from what we're hearing. As we can see the Ford GT driver here quite away now off of what is Joshua Wiggins. What happened to Nigel Stock? Now this was only moments ago down on the Mulsanne straight, coming down towards the second chicane. And as he made his way through the braking zone here, did Stock get it wrong on the chicane? He did. He went a little bit too high on the apex curve, and the car spun, and Stefan Vessel's there having to take evasive action in order to avoid the wayward Ford GT. And now as we look back to live camera, that explains why Stock has fallen down and Stefan Vessels has gained the position. Indeed, Joshua Wiggins has also come on through, as we are hearing that. Alistair Kirk into the pits now once again. I think this is his first scheduled stop, surely after the damage he picked up at the start of the race. We'll wait for that confirmation, but this does mean that Lambert Wedder leads right now ahead of William Foyle, and you can see William Foyle here making his way on through at the Dunlop chicane, and behind him is Paul Scott, and then it is Paul Walton, and a bit further back is Gareth Williams, as we can see the train of 4 cars here all coming back together once again, as we also hear that Joshua Wiggins into the pits. And I think Wiggins coming in for his opening scheduled stop after the damage he picked up early on in the race. So we are going to be seeing 3 stops from a number of drivers here due to damage they've picked up earlier on. But right now the big question is, what about Michael Seale, who's made 2 stops? Was it a scheduled stop? We'll find out about that later, as we can see that right now Paul Walton chasing down what is both Scott and Foyle in the run down onto the Mulsanne straight here. Now will he go for it early? Will he go for it late? Well, we can see Paul Scott much closer to Foyle and already looking for the move here as the BMW deploys its straight line speed versus the Audi R8. And as they come roaring down the straight here, it's one of those situations where I think, well, Mark Sykes is up ahead of him. He will act as the car that needs to move out the way under blue flags. But Paul Scott gets the move done, initially under braking, but Foyle not offering much resistance here because, of course, they've got 2 more sections of the Mulsanne straight in order to battle this over with. And as they make the way now onto the second part, you can see that Walton has closed up considerably, and Gareth Williams is only 1.5 seconds back. He's not close enough to benefit from the triple toe of the drivers in front, so he just has to watch on as they make the way on down. But you can see it's the case that Foyle looking for the move here, the return move versus Scott as they come down towards the second chicane. They're almost into the braking zone right now. Foyle on the inside. Meanwhile, it's Scott on the outside. Foyle tucks back in to the head of this pack as they make their way on through. And they are as they were when they started on the straight. But now they go on to part number 3. It's almost as if we're giving you 3 moves in a trilogy here. It's the Mulsanne trilogy on the straights. And now we can see that Foyle in the lead of this little pack right now. Will he be in the lead of it come the run into the Mulsanne corner itself? We can see Paul Scott there deciding to actually go a little bit defensive initially on the outside there versus Walton, and now he's looking to the inside. I think he's tried to close off the door to Walton. He looks to the inside, he tempts it, but Foyle in the end holds onto the position. But now they've got the added on sequel of what is the run down towards Indianapolis, and as they make the way out of the Mulsanne corner, now this is where the biting point kicks in, because it all comes down to who's going to be the braver in the run down towards what is Indianapolis. But you can see Paul Walton now starting to size up an opportunity here, as we can see Paul Scott gaining momentum, but it's Walton who took a peek. He wasn't able to find the space to look to move past Paul Scott, but as they come charging on down towards Indianapolis, is the right hand that they go, and under braking you can see all 3 drivers staying as they were. But right now Walton and also Scott both itching to make moves, and Gareth Williams is getting closer to the back of this pack, as you can see him in the rear view picture. But meanwhile we can see Scott here going defensive slightly once again into our large corner, wary of Walton trying to come on through. And I think it is also the case that the Next Gen Racing driver might be trying to work with his teammate Gareth Williams in order to bring Williams closer to this battle, because remember, there are teams in this championship as well as a Drivers' Championship, so teamwork is permitted, so long as, of course, a driver is not intentionally trying to destroy or damage another driver's race, because that would be against the rules. But it is the case that right now Paul Scott may feel he's got the measure of foil, but he wants to bring Williams into this fight, so that way the two Next Gen Racing cars can move on through, where you can see that right now Scott under a lot of offence, and Walton all over the back of Paul Scott as they make their way through the Corvette curves here. And Gareth Williams is now only 0.8 of a second and closing as all three drivers then make their way through, and foil is given a breather for the time being. Lambert Wedder 6.6 seconds up the road right now. The Dutchman having a peaceful time, as we are hearing that Linscombe Hatfield is now behind with Paul Williams and has had a moment out on circuit. What happened to Linscombe Hatfield? Well, this was in the run down through turn number 4 into 5, and was it a similar thing to what we saw earlier on in terms of losing the rear end for a number of drives? Indeed, Linscombe Hatfield has now fallen prey to the rear, snapping on him into turn number 6, and that is very unfortunate for the American. But he didn't lose the place, but he's lost time in chasing down Mark Baker. But as we look from him back to the battle here for what is P3, you can see Paul Scott now really having to drive defensively here, and Walton is going to try and go round on the exit. Now, this is going to be a very brave move, because if Walton can get this done and shut the door early, which he has, it means that now he does have that positional advantage going into Tetra Rouge. As you can see, Paul Scott immediately moving out of the way, and Gareth Williams being let on through here. I think it's the case that the two Next Gen Racing drivers have been on communication with the team, and the team have told them swap the positions and cost Walton as much time as possible, and now Williams will be given that opportunity to hunt down Walton. He's 1.2 seconds back, but as they make their way down to the Mulsanne straight, the difference is now Williams and Scott can trade places and use the slipstream to advantage. Walton, meanwhile, does not have the benefit of a distant tow. Instead, he's got to do it all on his own engine power as they make their way down towards the first chicane. Now, as they make their way charging on down, with 50 minutes of this race complete, by the time they complete the braking phase into the Mulsanne chicane here, chicane number 1, is the case that this battle for P3 just taking a bit of a lull right now, as we are seeing those trades to places, but it will build up again very shortly. And instead, we look a bit further down the order, where Gareth Mills has just made his way onto the back of what is Jack Wyborn. And in fact, I believe it is the case as he makes his way on through right now. He was a bit closer earlier on, but he's not quite as close now. But he did actually manage to pass Elwyn Sykes, and we saw that. And now he is trying to hunt down another Ferrari in the form of the Scudera red Ferrari of Jack Wyborn's 488 GT3 Evo, as he makes his way out of Dunlop chicane. And you can see Gareth Mills really building a lot of momentum here as he makes his way down into turn 6 and 7. Now, as he comes on through, I think what Gareth Mills has got to try and do in this sequence, he's got to stay as close as possible coming out to Tetra Rouge, because if he does so, he will have that overspeed on the run down towards the first of the Mulsanne chicanes. He's very close to do so, and Wyborn, in fact, going a little bit wide there, almost on the verge of picking up a track limit slowdown as they make their way down onto the Mulsanne straight. But you can see how Mills really coming alive here, and he's currently P6 in class. There's no reason why he couldn't finish in the top 5 in the AM class, if not even further out the order. He is enjoying these conditions, and we love to see it as he looks at that potential move now versus Wyborn. Wyborn puts the Ferrari right in the middle of the road here and essentially squeezes Mills to the outside a little bit. Not squeezes him in terms of force in there, but it says to Mills, you're going to have to go all the way around. You can see Wyborn keeping his nose in, but Mills, the last of the late breakers there, and getting it done. A brilliant move and gaining the position. And Wyborn, to be fair to him, did everything he could to try and outbrake the South African, but in the end, the Briton just did not have the brakes to hold back the GM Racing machine as it moves up a position. Wyborn now down to P6 in class. Meanwhile, Mills up into P5 in the AM class as they make their way down towards the second chicane, and you can see Mills doing a little bit of weaving here just to break the toe midway down the straight. He's allowed to do one weave, but it's the case if he does a lot of weaving, that will be brought to the steward's attention as we can see them make the way on in through the second of the chicanes. Meanwhile, a bit further back, I can tell you that Chris Keenan right now on the offensive versus what is Paul Coburn as they make their way down towards the braking zone for the second chicane here. This is the battle for what is P8 in the AM class and P22 overall as they make their way through. The Belgian on the inside here in the Belgian flag colours, and then we have got Paul Coburn on the outside here, the two BMW drivers. They change places, and you can see Paul Coburn in the TGC racing machine there, losing out under braking, but we're trying to bring things back now in the run down towards Mulsanne corner. But will he be able to find it? That is the big question as they make their way on through. As they come charging down towards the braking zone once again here, it's a case that we can see in the chat there, Katie Eames Commenting from early, and it's great to see you all tuning as always, folks, and do let me know your predictions as we're heading towards the halfway point of this race, who you think might be on course to take the winners. We can see Keenan and Coburn both making the same mistake there. Keenan going a bit late on the brakes and locking up, and Coburn following him, I think using Keenan as his braking reference marker, as Matthew Prouting's into the pits for his second pit stop from what was P6 at the time. Now I do wonder whether Prouting, this is his second and final stop, or whether he's got one more stop to go. We'll have to wait and see. But one thing's for certain right now with Prouting in, that's going to promote a number of drivers up the order, and we'll have to wait and find out how it all shakes out. But meanwhile, Paul Coburn looking to make that return versus Keenan, but he can't quite find it as Keenan goes deep there into Indianapolis and has to hold on that very tight inside line, being pulled down onto the dusty part of the circuit. And Coburn's on the inside now as they make their way in towards Arnage Corner, but he's not got the bravery on the brakes. But Keenan goes deep. Chris Keenan goes too deep then. Coburn up the position. He gets the place back as they make their way now down towards the Porsche curves. And meanwhile, further up the order, I can tell you that Paul Walton, with everything that's been going on and the fact that we saw Williams and Scott trade places, well, Walton has wasted no time in hunting down foil. Now this is Walton at his best as they make their way down towards the Mulsanne chicane, the first of the two chicanes, and you can see that foil holding on for the time being. And to be fair to foil, very fast paced, but Paul Walton really setting the time screen to light right now. He was only on that last lap 700ths off of setting what was the fastest lap of the race, and as they make their way on down towards what is the second chicane, you can see Walton really trying to get that move on, and you can understand why. He's conscious of the idea of Gareth Williams getting close and turning this into another two-way battle as they make their way down towards the second chicane. Now, will foil be compliant for Walton, or will he battle it hard? I can imagine the Crest Autosport driver will want to battle this. He will want a big result. He will not want to kill over easily, and as they make their way through the second chicane, now we start to come down to where it matters. Placing the car well for the Mulsanne corner, because it is a major overtaking place, and if done correctly, you can see the driver break away in the run to Indianapolis, and you can see Walton tucking in as close as possible. He now pulls out to look for the move. As we can see, it's the case that Foyle's going to hold on the outside here. I think Foyle's going to look to try and come back in the run up towards Indianapolis. We'll have to wait and see as they make their way into the braking zone here. Walton gains the place for now, but now how will Foyle react here as they make their way on through the corner? And as they come out of the corner, you can see it's the case. Foyle getting a good run there, 5 tenths back. And now he's got to try and gain on the Lamborghini in front of him and get the move done back into Indianapolis here. But he's a long way back, and the Audi, whilst it can be good on the straights here, but sitting in the toe, I think that's a long gap for it to close down as they make their way for the first kink. Through the second kink, they've still got a third of this straight to go. And as they make their way on five, I think that gap is too long for Foyle to come on back right now. As in fact, he does start to lift off in the run into Indianapolis here. And I think Walton has got the move done. And it is the case now that if Walton can keep this pace up, he'll try to make the breakaway, and Foyle will just tuck him behind. But the return question will be, of course, can Gareth Williams latch on, as Williams is only 1.8 seconds back off of Foyle right now and is continuing to close. But I think also Williams might be thinking about the wider strategy here in terms of how he plays this race. Meanwhile, it's the case that Stefan Vessel's flying here in P9 overall. He is our leader in the AM class here and taking the fight to his colleagues in the Pro class. That's Nathan Scott he's chasing after right now, and Vessel's really just enjoying this race, I think, and enjoying putting the pressure, as we heard from his interview, his post-race interview in the sprint race last time out. It was the case he enjoys putting the pressure on the pros every so often, and it's light touch pressure. Of course, he knows he's not battling for points with them, but he likes to chase them and just give them a run for their money. You can see Vessels here keeping that pressure on Scott as they make their way up towards the Porsche curves. But as they come on through and head into the right hander of the sequence, you can see Vessels just tucking in behind and doing some fuel saving, no doubt, and also some tyre management as he comes on through. I can tell you it's the situation that right now William Foyle has started to fall back off of Walton, and now it's the case that Gareth Williams has to be put to the test if he can move up into P3 in short order. As our drivers come through the sequence of corners once again here and go on to another lap, they go on to their 15th lap right now, and it is still the case that Lamont Wedder lead in this race. But in terms of pace, I think he will now be all too aware of the fact that Walton is closing down on him, and Walton is closing down at a rate of 1 second a lap on average. We'll wait to see whether that continues when Walton returns to clear air in terms of he's on the Mulsanne straight without a slipstream. But Wedder right now will be starting to think about that pressure building from behind. But to be fair, the Team Racing Netherlands driver has been running this race very well so far, and I think he'd be pleased with a podium at the minimum as he makes his way through Tetra Rouge for the 15th time of Ask Him. As he makes his way through the sequence of corners, we check in with our stewards right now, and we're not seeing anything from our stewards at this point in time. But as our drivers make their way on through the corners, it is a situation whereby now, as we've got those gaps opening up once again, as Matthew Proughton has found his way past Mark Baker, and I think Mark Baker has gone into the pit lane, in fact, and yet Mark Baker is in, and I would assume this is for his second scheduled stop. Although if it is an early stop here. It's very interesting to see how the pit stops have been spaced out. Normally in a type of race like this, you would potentially look to split the race into 3 equal stints, but some drivers, I think, feeling as though they can do the final hour on a single stint. We'll have to wait and see. Well, Mark Baker definitely going for that approach, as he's not up on the jacks. So this is a fuel stop, and well, I believe he's not up on the jacks, but as we look from him, we can see Alistair Kirk, meanwhile, in P10 overall. That's P9 in class. He's just continuing on his merry way, and the TGC racing driver right now, I think, having to try and recuperate this race after what was that difficult start in the instant, which saw him drop quite a far way down the order. But all of our battles right now spaced out to a degree, and we are waiting to see how the strategy spits all of our drivers back out onto the circuit and how it causes them to interfere with one another's plans. But I am very interested to see, with regards to Alistair Kirk, who has made his 2 stops, and also with regards to the likes of Mark Baker, how these early stops are going to play out, whether we're going to see additional stops being made. As we can see, Stefan Vessels has now found his way past Nathan Scott in the slipstream run down towards the second chicane on Mulsanne here. I think Stefan Vessels at this point, the racing team Astra driver, just simply enjoying this momentum that he's got behind him. But meanwhile, further down the order, I'm hearing that Darren Doherty has found his way past Paul Williams in another slipstream situation, and these drivers in the run down towards the first of the Mulsanne chicanes here on the straight, and the Altitude Esports driver chasing down Linscombe Hatfield, who is only 2.1 seconds up the road. Now, as they make their way roaring down towards what is the second chicane, the question now, of course, is how are the lap times weighing up between Doherty and Linscombe Hatfield. Well, on that last lap, Doherty set a 3:58.43, Linscombe Hatfield a 4-minute flat .31. So it is the case that Doherty is closing at a sensational rate of knots right now, and you would imagine he'll be within striking distance come at the end of this lap. But it's one thing to catch, another thing to pass, and it's all about the tactical play with regards to when do you go for the pass. So Stefan Albanese into the pits as well, and I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, this is for his 3rd pit stop. So we are seeing some drivers having to do a 3rd pit stop due to damage they sustained at the start of the race. But I would say if Albanese is coming in once again, then that is likely going to be his 2nd scheduled stop. And if so, we are seeing some long stints being put in at the end of this race as we cross the hour mark and now moving to the 2nd hour of this 2-hour race at Le Mans, our first Super Endurance in round number 6. And the story really has been, so far over the open hour, Lamont started towards the front of the pro class, and having started at the front of the class, he has just tried to break away and run away with this race. He's done so very well for the most part after the first round of scheduled pit stops, but now he has Paul Walton hunting him down. Paul Walton, of course, starting from towards the back of the pro class alongside Gareth Williams, and both drivers have found their way through the order, but Paul Walton a bit more efficiently. And he's now closing down Lamont at what is a rate of, as he crosses the timeline there, a rate of approximately 1 second a lap. William Foyle, however, in P3 in the pro class should not be counted out, given the pace he has been displaying. He's matching Walton for pace time and time again. And behind we've got Gareth Williams, who's also in that pursuit in P4 here and trying to close up to Foyle. And Paul Scott completing the top 5 in the pro class. Other things to note in the pro class in terms of major moments: Dan Moorey, whilst he was in the battle for what we would argue would be the battle for P2, a number of slowdowns saw Dan Moorey drop out of the battle, and instead Jamie Dorey now really starting to build up that momentum, as we're hearing Chris Keenan and also Mark Sykes have both come into the pits. Once again, they've jumped to the pits, and meanwhile it is the case that Nathan J. Scott, well, his race is not quite working out right now for the TGC racing driver here down in P8 in the pro class, P9 overall. Alistair Kirk as well, TGC racing having a difficult day at the office. Alistair Kirk in particular being involved in an incident on the opening laps, and we do believe he'll be doing 1 stop more due to the damage he picked up early on, which he had to repair in an opening early pit stop. And it is Nigel Stock who completes the top 10 of what is the pro class, with a mistake early on in the race cost him a lot of time. Indeed, now he's battling against the elements in order to come back up through the order. Other key items to note, we saw the retirement of 2 pro drivers early on. Antonio Giovinazzi, our guest driver for today, retiring after what was the best part of, if we do the math in our heads, retiring after 7 laps due to an incident earlier on in the race, and also a number of subsequent incidents, particularly having difficulty with the car going through turn number 5 and the car going up into the gravel on the run through turn 5 into 6, seeing the car in a state where it was unfit to continue. And we also lost Rick Jansen very early on in the race as well. The BMW driver had technical issues with the car. As meanwhile, we look to Jamie Dory here as he makes his way down towards the second Mulsanne chicane here. And really, in the story of the Pro Class, Jamie Dory having to try and find his way back into the hunt as he makes the move, or attempts to make the move here, versus Dan Moorey down into the Mulsanne chicane, but not able to find it. Instead, has to tuck in behind for the time being. As we're hearing that Gareth Mills is into the pits as well, and with Gareth Mills coming in, I assume that is his second scheduled stop, and we'll bring you the story of the AM class now as well. And that story of the AM class really is, you can see the leader right now of the AM class, P8 overall, leader by considerable margin. That's Stefan Vessels, the racing team Astra Drive, finding his way through the Anfield, having started from the back of it due to his championship position going into this round, being the lead of the championship in the AMs. He's found his way on through, but to be fair to him, he's just simply nailed lap after lap. No mistake so far. He has been flawless. In P2, Travis Lincombe Hatfield, who would be closer if it were not for a mistake going through what was turn number 6, losing the rear end of the car, and also I do believe a mistake where he parked the car up on Indianapolis. It's the case that the American puts in a very valiant drive right now, but he does have P3 man Darren Doherty just behind him here, and Darren Doherty has really taken to this event in terms of trying to chase down the Lamborghini driver ahead of him, as we see Joshua Wiggins there in the reveal picture and Paul Williams trading places, but the Irishman and Darren Doherty gaining ground on Lincombe Hatfield right now and enjoying the drive. Meanwhile, in P4 in the M class, it's Jack Wyborn here, the Scudera Ferrari machine, making his way down towards the second of the Mulsanne chicanes right now. And Wyborn, having started towards the front, was leading for a considerable period of time, but his pace has dropped off to an extent, but he is still driving well to be inside the top 5 right now in that P4 position. And Elwin Sykes completes our top 5 in the AM class there with a considerable and consistent drive as it currently stands. But as we look back to Jamie Dory here, briefly battling with Dan Moorey in the run into the Porsche curves, no way through this time as we ride on board here with the Audi R8 driver. He's trying to size that move versus the Porsche. You can see how these two drivers are very well met and very well matched with regards to their cars. What we can see through the handling dedicated sections of the circuit, it's Dan Moorey who gains in the Porsche, but as soon as we start to see that mixture of handling and also performance in terms of straight line performance, that's where Dory comes alive in the Audi as they make their way out of the Corvette curves. We saw Moorey run a little bit wide there as the fastest lap is now dropped down. Also, the fastest lap is now raised to a 3:55.93. It is the case that William Foyle has put in an absolutely astounding lap, and he is hunting down Paul Walton once again. Is William Foyle, as we continue to watch Jamie Dory here hunt down Dan Moorey. No change between these two right now, but Dory the faster of the two drivers by a considerable margin as they go up into the Dunlop chicane. Now, will we see a potential move here into turn 2? He considers it. He looks around the brake in there as we're hearing that Nathan Scott is into the pits. I can see out my commentary box window that Nathan Scott is into the pits, what we believe is his second and final stop as they make their way on around. And Jamie Dory just keeping that pressure on for the time being. He can't stay that close, however, coming into turn 6 here for the simple reason if he were to, he'd lose out considerably later on through the chicane there as they come on through Tetra Rouge. Right now, he needs to nail this to stay close onto Mulsanne. And Dory nails the corner there. In fact, he's been able to gain a lot of momentum. This could be a major opportunity for Dory as they come onto the Mulsanne straight. They go through the right-hand kink, and now they make their way down towards the first of the two chicanes. We look to the exterior cameras here as he moves to the inside for what will be the braking zone for the first chicane. They're side by side now in the run down. This is the battle for what is P6 in the Pro Class, and as they come on down into the braking zone, it's the case I think Dory's going to tuck in ahead right now, but he keeps the car slightly towards the centre of the road to get the message through to Moorey. Look, I'm getting ahead. There's no way you're cutting back in on the inside here. If you want it, you're going to have to come for it later in the lap. And I think now we have to wait and see if Moorey will respond. But speaking of responding, I can tell you that after William Foyle was passed by Paul Walton as they go through the second of the Mulsanne chicanes, he has responded considerably right now because Foyle is not giving up this hunt for P2, and indeed the hunt for the overall race win, as we can see that Lambert Wedder on the time screen is only 3.6 seconds up the road, and you can see Lambert Wedder literally in the background of the picture, the foreground as the camera turned around right now. This is how close it is getting to the lead of the Pro Class right now. It's the case that Foyle and Walton are pushing one another very, very intensely, and Foyle looking to go round the outside as Walton goes defensive into the Mulsanne corner here. Now, with regards to Gareth Williams, who's only 2 seconds back, Williams has not been closing up as rapidly as we would have perhaps perhaps expected as Jack Wyborn's into the pit. But the question, of course, is Williams playing the long game here? Is he waiting for these two to really kick it off and then he's going to build up the momentum? Or is it the case he just has not got any more in the tank? Where if I was in the shoes of Williams, I think Williams a very tactical driver when he needs to. He loves a good fight, but in these long races, he knows he's got to play the long game in order to come back into the proceedings. We will have to wait and see what plays out there, as we can see at full making his way down into the Indianapolis corner as he comes on through. No change right now, but building that momentum. And meanwhile, a little bit further down the road, I can tell that Dan Moorey has not managed to get back past Jamie Dory, but he is closing up to him. And we can see here as they make their way into Indianapolis, Dan Moorey still tucked in behind the Audi driver here after they exchange places at the first of the moles and chicanes earlier on this lap. But meanwhile, as we look from them to what is going a bit further up the order once again, back to our battle for P2, we can see it's the case that William fall all over the back of Walton, but he's not going to be able to look for the move here unless there is a mistake. So as a result, we'll continue to do our recap of the AM class in the meantime, and I can tell you outside the top 5 of the AM class, we've got Paul Coburn right now in what is that P5 position. And do not be confused there, ladies and gentlemen, it says he's a privateer. He's in fact racing for TGC, and we'll get that updated later on. It is the case that Coburn right now just ahead of Davide Favo in what is P6 there, Davide Favo. And then we've got Gareth Mills, who having made his second stop is now chasing these guys down, and he is in P7 ahead of Mark Baker, and Mark Baker having made his second stop as well. Mills just out ahead of the Team Tetra Rouge driver there, and it is the case that Mark Baker having a difficult day in this race, I think, trying to play the long game in terms of strategy. He was one of our earliest drivers to come in for his second stop, coming in before the first hour had passed. Was that all part of the plan, or has he got to do a third stop? We'll have to wait and see. And it is the case that Jack Wyborn in P9 in the AM class, and then completing our top 10 in the AMs, we've got Chris Keenan here. And meanwhile, Liam Tack has retired from this race, and also Mark Sykes has retired. So we've lost 2 drivers in the Pro class and 2 drivers in the AM class. Unfortunately, we have had 4 retirements. We still have 25 of our 29 drivers racing with what is just under 51 minutes to go around Le Mans. And as the race continues here, and we look into you guys and girls in the chat, it is the case where we were going to take a look. But I think Jack Wyborn has had a moment. Oh, goodness me. And Wyborn into the wall there before Tetra Rouge. And as he returns to the circuit, you can see a flash of lights there. That, I believe, was Paul Scott coming on through. Well, Wyborn has got it wrong. What has happened? Has he been pulled off onto the grass? Has he gone a little bit wide out to 7? We're about to see as he made his way through turn number 7. He's carried a lot of momentum, but he's put the right-hand wheels up onto the curb. And yes, he got a bit too much momentum, and the left-hand side tyres went onto the grass. So you could see that Lamont Wedder having to take evasive action there, and very, very good reaction to Lamont Wedder. That could have been a disaster for Wedder, but to be fair, Jack Wyborn kept the car exactly where it was parked. He did not move it, and Wedder has lost out to a degree because of that. He lost a bit of time having to take that evasive action. Walton and Full were not as heavily compromised, but that could have been a disaster for the Team Racing Netherlands driver, who is pressing on. And with 50 minutes to go now, it is the case where there's going to be one more pit stop for our leaders. We know that, as Linscombe Hatfield is into the pits from P3 in the AM class to take his second and final stop. We're going to wait and see how these pit stops play out. Will we see a potential pit stop change the order of the proceedings? And remember in particular that we did see Walton have one of the faster stops over the course of the opening round of pit stops, and Wedder having just one of those standard time stops, and not really faster or slower than the guys around him right in the midfield. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. But you can also see further back there in P4, Gareth Williams now 1.6 seconds back on the battle for P2. I think Williams is now starting to turn things up a notch. I think he's realised now, okay, the pit window's now starting to come for that second stop. Got to build that momentum a little bit. Indeed, talking about some building momentum, we can see here Dan Moorey all over the back of Jamie Dory as they make their way down towards the braking zone for what is the Mulsanne corner. Now Moorey as close as he's ever going to want to be to the back of that Audi R8, and as they come into the braking zone, no change between the two of them for the time being as they make their way through turn number 14 and 15. And as they come on through right now, we'll see Davide Favo into the pits as Linscombe Hatfield comes out of the pits, which promotes Mark Baker up into P6 in the AM class. But the American will now go chase him down, of course. But as they make their way on through the corners, it is the case that Dan Moorey are leading behind Jamie Dory leading Dan Moorey as they head down towards Indianapolis. But again, very close here, Moorey, as he looks to go around the outside. You can see that Dory shuts the door then, essentially says to Moorey, if you want it, you're going to have to send it up the inside to outside line here. I'm not giving you the space that you need in order to make this move occur. But I think Dan Moorey also very wise here. Both drivers are aware of the fact that they are currently 10 seconds off of the back of Paul Scott, and I think they are looking at that opportunity of gaining through the pit window and not fighting one another too hard. As we can see Jack Wyborn's crumpled rear wing on that Ferrari there, just just in the foreground of your camera with Wyborn trying to make his way, I would presume, to the pits in the near future. But with this battle for P6 raging on, I can tell you now the battle for the lead has kicked off, with the fact that Lambert Wedder has now been reeled in by Paul Walton as we ride on board the gearbox here of Lambert Wedder as he comes out of the Corvette curves. We are now making our way up towards the Ford chicanes. Will we see any one of these drivers peel into the pits? Will we see a potential undercut from anybody? I think Lambert Wedder's peeling into the pits and he's in. Wedder has decided to pull the trigger early. He's decided to go for what is effectively the undercut on what is Walton's pace, and you can see that Foyle has done the same as they come on in. Now, what about Gareth Williams? Williams has done the same, so Walton will take the overall lead of this race, but remember, he is still due a pit stop as Paul Scott has also come in. So will this work out? That's the question. Now, Walton will need to have the lap of his life right now if he's planning to come in at the end of this lap, because if he does not deliver on this one, you can imagine he will lose out considerably as he runs a little bit wide there and clips while the track limit sensors as they make the way, as he makes his way out of the Dunlop chicane. And I think that might be a warning this time, because he only clipped the one sensor, not both. We'll have to wait and see as Jamie Dorey and also Dan Moorey into the pits, and they're literally racing one another to their pit boxes here. This is how close the two drivers are, particularly the Barracuda with Next Gen Racing driver trying to hold on, as meanwhile a little bit further down the order I'm hearing that Paul Colburn has had a moment where he's gone off circuit somewhere, and meanwhile we try and see here. I think he's had a run off there at Mulsanne Corner. It's gone a bit wrong for Paul Colburn, and he's now trying to bring that car back together, and that is a bit unfortunate, but at the same time it's understandable given how hard this circuit punishes drives and pushes drivers all the way through and through as he makes his way now down towards what is the Indianapolis corner, and as he comes charging on down, it is the case. We get an update on our screen, so you can see Paul Colburn's team now correctly registered. Meanwhile, it is the battle between what is Mark Baker and Gareth Mills here, and it's Mark Baker who gets ahead in the run down towards Indianapolis as they make the way on through the corner, and Mark Baker with quite a subtle move there and gaining the place off of Gareth Mills. And let's take a look back at how it all took place. Well, in fact, it was much earlier on, and it was in the drag race down towards what was the the second of the Mulsanne chicanes that Mark Baker got the move done, and it was Gareth Mills who was trying to come back there, but just did not have the overspeed in the end. So, my apologies, ladies and gentlemen, the move made much earlier on than we originally anticipated, but Mark Baker now up into what is P5 in the AM class with Gareth Mills just behind. I think Mills will try to hang with him, as Stefan Vessels has made his second stop and come out of the pits already, and Stefan Vessels will have, well, he's making his way out of the pits. Darren Doherty into the pits right now. I think Doherty will literally be thinking, how on earth is he that far ahead of me? Well, I think it's all in the lap time from Stefan Vessels, but more importantly right now, I can tell you that after that round of pit stops, Alistair Kirk is now in P2, the TGC Racing driver, but the question is, of course, is he planning to pit again? He's got another 45 minutes of this race to go by the time he comes down towards the second of the Mulsanne chicanes. If he's not due another stop, then this is a piece of masterclass work, but if he is due that third stop, then it is going to undermine his race entirely. We'll have to wait and see. But meanwhile, in terms of the leaders who have all pitted, I can tell you that Lambert Widow has come out ahead of Gareth Williams. He's come out ahead by 0.8 of a second, but notice this with regards to the order they've come out. It's William Foyle who is out ahead of the pair of them, and Foyle having a much shorter stop by comparison, and between them they've got Joshua Wiggins here. Now Josh Wiggins, of course, have made 2 stops. We're not sure if he requires another stop as well. We'll have to wait and see, as we hear from Mark Sykes there in the Facebook chat to say that he had 20 minutes worth of repairs, meaning the car had to be retired. That's very unfortunate to hear, Mark. It's great to see it out on circuit all the same. But as we look at Josh Williams right now, how will he play into this battle for what is P6 on track right now? But it will effectively be the battle for the lead come at the end of the pit stop window when Paul Walton comes on in. That is the big question in the mind right now, as we're in that Jack Wyborn has jumped to the pits, which is very unfortunate. I think Jack Wyborn might be having some difficulties with the car after the damage. Picked up a number of drivers succumbing to the attrition here at Le Mans, but we can see that right now, with this battle starting to really come to its peak, Gareth Williams is closing onto the back of Lambert Wedder right now as we ride on board with the BMW driver of Gareth Williams as he goes chasing after the Team Racing Netherlands driver ahead of him. But I think the big challenge here, of course, is with regards to what can Williams do from where he is right now, because he doesn't want to battle too hard. You can imagine if he does battle hard, as we see Wedder then moving off the racing line briefly and going onto a rather defensive line, and I think trying to get the message where he's not going to fight it, or is he? Hold on a second, as they make the way in towards Indianapolis. Wedder's going to hold the outside to inside line here, and Williams is going to go around the outside. He's going to try for it. He can't quite get it done, as Paul Walton is now into the pit lane. So this is critical, and this battle in between the two of them could cost the pair a massive amount of time as they make their way through our large corner. Meanwhile, a bit further up the road, I can see that Joshua Wiggins is closing up to the back of William Foyle right now. Wiggins is putting that pressure on as they make their way up towards the Porsche curves. But meanwhile, Paul Walton is in to the pits, and I think they have got that car up on the Jackson by the looks of things. We'll wait and see how this all plays out. But Gareth Williams right now looking side by side with Wes Lant, when he goes around the outside there into the Porsche curves, and he's going to hold the inside here into the second part of the corner sequence, and he's got the move done there as Gareth Williams. But can he now hold on as Alistair Kirk takes the lead of this race? And meanwhile, Nigel Stock in from what was at the time P3. That will see him drop down the order quite a margin. But Gareth Williams with a brave move there, and that is a critical move when all is said and done, I'm sure, as they make their way now down towards the Ford chicanes. They come on through, and with Matthew Prouting going up into P2, going on, having made 2 stops. Again, we're waiting to see how all these pit stops play out. But Paul Walton is coming out of the pits. Now, where is William Foyle in all this? William Foyle is making his way out the final corner. It's going to be close here. Walton is almost out of the limiter, and he's out of the pits. Foyle's coming on through here, and as they make their way around through turn number 1, I think Walton is just going to lose out by a small margin. And in fact, he's come out right behind Foyle. They are as they were only moments ago when we saw Foyle come into the pits. So that's how the strategy has played out. And right now, assuming that Kirk and Prouting have to pit again, although we're waiting for confirmation that, of course, Foyle is effectively your race leader in the Pro class, and he is only 8 tenths of a second ahead of Walton, and this is going to go down to the... Whoa, goodness me! And Walton's lost it! He's lost it coming out to turn 7, and he's into the wall! Walton just pushing too hard on cold tyres by the looks of things, and he's got it all wrong. And as he waits to rejoin the racing, this completely opens up an opportunity for William Foyle to potentially take the win. He's 2.1 seconds ahead of Josh Wiggins, and we believe that Wiggins may have another pit stop on the cards. Meanwhile, further back, Gareth Williams is not having it all his own way as they make their way down towards the Mulsanne chicane, the first of the 2 of them. And you can see that Lam and Wed are trying to go round the outside here. I think it's going to be the case that Williams will defend this as hard as he can. And you can see trying to keep it down the inside, but it didn't work. And now they make their way onto the second part of the Mulsanne chicane, the Mulsanne straight. My goodness, how this race has erupted after the second round of pit stops. And what an unexpected turn of events, and particularly for Paul Walton, who's down in P11 after that moment. But we'll come back to analysing that in a minute, as right now Williams makes the charge back past Wedder once again up on his inside in towards the second of the chicanes. And as they come charging down into the braking zone here, it is the case that Williams are looking on the inside, Wedder on the outside, into the braking zone they go. No change in terms of the overall order. It is the case that Williams, after 2 parts of the straight, is still the leader in this pair. But now the big question is, what about in the run down towards Mulsanne corner? Will we see Wedder really force his way on through now and trying to make the break out of the slow corner and onto the run to Indianapolis as they head on down? You can see it's the case that Williams is defending this. He knows he does not want Wedder to be ahead as they make the way on down, but Wedder's got the overspeed here, and as they come in under braking, it's going to be a long way round the outside for the Team Racing Netherlands driver as Williams is on his inside. Williams defends it well, but now it's the big drag race down towards Indianapolis here, and you can see Williams flashing his lights. I think he's trying to get the message through to Wedder. We don't need to fight, we need to hunt down Foyle. But I think Wedder's not listening. I think he wants this position just as much as he does the win. As they make their way down towards Indianapolis, you can see Wedder looks at a move on the inside. They go into the second kink, and as they come on through the right hand, you can see Williams opening the space up there. He does not want to fight this, does Williams? I don't think. I think he wants these two to put things aside and hunt down Foyle, who right now is being allowed to get away with what we believe is the lead of the race. As we can see Williams flashing his lights, I think trying to send either a message saying I'm not going to fight you, or trying to be a distraction. Only time will tell with regards to what message he is trying to send as they make their way out of our large corner. You can see Paul Scott a bit further back. He's 2.6 seconds back on this battle. And Paul Williams is inching ever closer to the back of Paul Scott. He's actually pacing with Paul Scott right now, but we can see as he makes his way on through, he's got behind him Jamie Dory, and a bit further back we've got Dan Moorey. And there's our confirmation, ladies and gentlemen. Alistair Kirk has got to make a third pit stop. We thought he did have it on the cards, and I would presume Matthew Prouting will also have another pit stop very shortly as he makes his way in. Oh no, he doesn't. A little bit of a feint there. I'm wondering if he's perhaps listening to the live feed and decided to throw a dummy, but Matthew Prouting will go on to take the lead of this race with Williams William Foyle right now pressing on the Crest Autosport driver here, doing everything he can to bring this home. But meanwhile, a bit further down the road, I can tell you that Gareth Mills battling with Mark Baker here as they come down towards Indianapolis. This is the battle for P3, the final step on the podium in the AM class, and Mills looking at this opportunity as we're hearing that Liam Tack has had a moment out on circuit. We'll wait to see what happened there very shortly, but Mills has to settle back in behind as Mark Baker holds on for now, and as they make the way on through, we're hearing that Joshua Wiggins into the pit, so he is making that one more stop, and it is the case that right now the question is Matthew Proutin due one more stop, or is it the case that he's going to the end? Well, surely he must be due for another stop as Paul Williams comes into the pits for his second and final stop of the day as well. So those final pit stops are now being cleared, and it is the case that Mills tucking in behind here. What is Mark Baker not going to be going for the move anytime soon into the Porsche curves? But with all this and everything that's happened, let's take a look back at what happened to Liam Tack only moments ago. So we can see here the Ferrari driver making his way down to Indianapolis. I think the car comes loose under braking here. Well, it doesn't come loose under braking. In fact, he just gets too high on the apex curve into Indianapolis, and the car locks up there. And it was the case that he had to stop the car effectively. As you can see, Darren Doherty and Nigel Stock coming on through, and that's where Liam Tack had the moment. As when he went into Arnage, it was the case. I think he just moved out the way in the end to let Nigel Stock on through with the blue flags waving in his visor. But looking back to our live pictures right now, with these final pit stops occurring, we look back up towards our battle for what is P3, and we can see now we've got the BMW army battling with itself, with Lamont Wedder at the head of the train, and then we've got Gareth Williams and Paul Scott in pursuit. And really for Paul Scott right now, it's the case, well, the two next-gen drivers of what is Williams and Scott can try to work this together. They need to come up with a plan in order to be able to try and pass Wedder and then make the break and the charge after Foyle, because Foyle right now is now 7.7 seconds up the road. You can see him off in the distance there at the second chicane. Foyle is running away, and that is what Williams now will be getting frustrated with. He needs to get past Wedder and make the breakaway, but you can see once again under braking there into the second chicane, there's just no way to outbrake the Dutchman. The Dutchman just seems to have the measure on the brake as they now come on through and head down towards Mulsanne corner, and as they come charging on down towards the final corner at the end of the straight, here's the situation where I think if Williams can't find his way through, he will be resigned to a battle for what is P2 when all is said and done, but we will wait and see how that all plays out very shortly. As he makes his way through the corners here and as he comes on through, I think it's the case right now whereby Williams will be timing this. He'll look for the ideal opportunity. He will try to see where he can get it done. As Alistair Kirk in the pits, and D dropping all the way down to P24 is Alistair Kirk. And I think there may be an issue with the car. In fact, he's jumped to the pits as Alistair Kirk, so this has not gone well for him. And meanwhile, Gareth Williams now looking around the outside once again in towards Indianapolis here. The outside to inside line. He's got his nose ahead, but now it's the test of confidence. Into the right hand they come, and as they make their way through, Williams is going to get ahead this time. Wedder's not going to be able to fight this one back, and now Williams has to break away as he runs a little bit wide there coming out of Indianapolis, but not too wide as to lose the rear end of the car. Keeps it nice and stable as they make their way through Arnage, but the problem is now for Williams as we ride on board the gearbox, he has got a face full of BMW M4, a Dutch BMW M4 chasing after him as they make their way up towards the Porsche curves here. Can he clear Lamont Wedder, or will we see a repeat of this later on? We have still got what is 35 minutes of racing to go, and it is the case that William Foyle is, we believe, your leader of this race. Matthew Proutin, we do believe, has another pit stop on the cards, but if not, then it is Matthew Proutin who is our leader in the Pro class. In the AM class, it's Stefan Vessel's leading at the moment by a significant margin over Darren Doherty, but this battle for the podium of what is the Pro class is starting to throw up a whole mixture of traits in terms of drivers battling for position, particularly Lamont Wedder, who really seems to be trying to hold on to every position for what it's worth. And to be fair to him, why wouldn't he, when he's looking to get some huge points on the board, what this race being double points? And we can see it's the case that Gareth Williams right now, he's ahead, but will Wedder come back in, and Wedder staying very close through the handling sector here, and as they make their way through the final forward chicane and complete what for them is lap number 21 on to lap 22 they go. You can see how Williams is gradually starting to drop Wedder, but not enough to feel safe here. And in fact, I think what now Williams will be hoping is that he can expand that gap up to a second come the run through Techerouge and onto the Mulsanne straight, as we are hearing that Paul Walton into the pits to do repair work on the car, and how it has gone so wrong for Paul Walton with that one mistake, and it's all gone horrifically wrong for the Briton with that one nightmare moment which saw him go into the wall. And let's take a look back at what happened when he made contact with the wall. was he was making his way in the pursuit of William Fall. He just lost the rear of the car there, coming down the dip out of turn 8 and heading up towards Tetra Rouge corner, and that is what saw it all go wrong for Paul Walton, and now having to do repair work on the car. It is the case he's done the repair work. He's going to come out in what we believe is P10, well, sorry, my apologies, P9 in class, because Michael Seale is going to have the run on him as they make the way on through. A will here as we see that Walton has just come out ahead of Seale, and Joshua Wiggins is just behind after making his pit stop. But meanwhile, we can see that Lambert Wedder is not letting this battle for P3 go, and this is what Williams will not have wanted to see. He needs to make that break, and he can't find it right now. So instead, it's going to be one of those situations whereby I think Williams is going to be holding on and trying to just simply keep the Dutchman at bay. But ahead of them, William Fall just making that breakaway in that P2 position. Now, to be fair, I'll say this. If Matthew Prouting is going to the end on this current stint, this is going to be a surprise to the system, and a welcome one to be sure, because right now Prouting is not putting a foot wrong. I can tell you that as he makes his way down towards the Mulsanne corner. As he comes on through, the Briton are doing everything right, but we will wait and see. As we can see, Lambert Wedder has found his way back past Gareth Williams in the run into the second chicane. It's a change under braking through the slipstream, but now Gareth Williams will try to get back ahead into Mulsanne corner, and as they make the way on down, in terms of lap times right now, these drivers are lapping on average a second a lap slower than William Fall. They are losing time massively by battling the way they are, and as they come down into Mulsanne corner, you can see Wedder defending here. He's not letting this go, and as a result, as they make the way out of the corner and now onto what is the straight down towards Indianapolis, you can see Williams flashing his lights again here. I think Williams just starting to get a bit frustrated at the situation. Paul Scott has caught up to the back of this as well. And I think now it may be the case that they'll try to work something out whereby perhaps they can try to go for some sort of Moses manoeuvre versus Wedder down on the Mulsanne straight on the next lap. We'll have to wait and see, as we can see that right now Gareth Williams getting ahead for the time. He's got his nose ahead, and as they make their way down to the braking zone for Indianapolis, you can see Wedder not contesting it this time, but he does look to the inside briefly into the apex there of the left-hander of Indianapolis. He can't find a way back on through. Meanwhile, further back, I can tell you that Michael Seale puts in that pressure on what is Paul Walton as they go charging down the straight towards what is the right-hander of the Mulsanne corner, turn at number 15, and you can see that Michael Seale all over the back of Walton, and Walton having to use the V10 power in the back of the Lamborghini Huracan to keep Seale at bay as they go racing down towards Indianapolis, as we take a quick sip of water. Now, of course, the situation here for Seale is that he'd love to get ahead of Walton. Now, Walton's not going to want to give up a single position, because if he lost even one position, it would be an absolute disaster for Walton, and that is why I think he's going to defend this one to death. As we hear that Matthew Prouting is into the pits, we suspected another pit stop was on the cards. Where will Prouting come out in all of this? Because he has been lapping very well. We'll wait and see. But what that will mean is the driver you are now looking at, William Foyle, will go on to take the lead as he goes on to what for him is lap 23, and he's now got half an hour of this race to go, and it could be a maiden win for William Foyle if he keeps up this momentum with Gareth Williams, Lambert Wedder and Paul Scott all giving chase. But the trouble is they're not willing to settle down into an order and give up that fight for P2 in order to catch up to our race leader, and that is where all the time is being made by William Foyle right now. Foyle lapping consistently in the mid to low 57s. Williams, Wedder and Scott, if they were not battling with one another, would be lapping to similar laps, if not a bit faster, and that is where the frustration comes in, because they're not being allowed to go chase after Foyle because they're too busy squabbling over that P2 position. But to be fair, they're racers at the end of the day. They want to get the best possible result they can, and particularly when you haven't had the best of the season so far, you'll do everything to take a point off the leader if you're Lambert Wedder or Paul Scott, and that is the situation they find themselves in as they go charging onto the Mulsanne straight once again, and that gap 5 tenths of a second closing. Wedder once again well within his right to look to come back for P2 as they make their way on down. But meanwhile, Matthew Prouting makes his way out of the pits. Now, Michael Seale and Josh Wiggins have already come on through. Where is Nigel Stott? Well, Nigel Stott makes his way out of the final corner and onto a lap. I think Prouting's going to come out well ahead. He is indeed, as he makes his way out of the pit lane and onto his final 29 minutes plus the final lap of this race, as Gareth Mills is into the pit for a third stop. This is a surprise and not a good one, I can tell you that at most, because Gareth Mills coming in right now. And that means he's going to drop quite a way down the order, as that will release Travis Linscombe-Hatfield into P4 in class as he makes his way across that timing line up into P4 in the AM class he goes, and that will release Mark Baker to battle for what is P3. Well, he's going to have P3 to himself and look to hunt down Darren Doherty, who's only 6 seconds up the road from him in the remainder of this race. But meanwhile, whilst he's going chasing, I can tell you that Gareth Williams and also Lambert Wheeler constantly back and forth on positions right now, and it is the same for Michael Seale and Josh Wiggins. As we can see here, the battle for what is P8 in the Pro Class, P9 overall, and it's Michael Seale who's at the back of this pair right now as they make their way through the first of the Mulsanne chicanes, constantly trading places and just settling into that rhythm as they come on down onto the second part of Mulsanne. Now, as they make their way on down this time, will we see a switch once again? I think we will see a switch between the two of them as we're hearing that Stefan Albanese into the pit lane once again. A number of drives into the pits, and Seale doing everything he can to try and stay close to Wiggins right now. And I think Wiggins at this point would love to catch up to Walton, but I think Walton is on a charge right now to try and just get something back out of this race after having to make that additional stop due to the incident earlier on. But as they make them through, Seale makes the move here versus Wiggins, with Wiggins going deep. They're getting it wrong on the exit of the second chicane, and Wiggins now tucks in behind and making sure to lift off the throttle not to gain any time, and now making his way down towards the Mulsanne corner here, and Seale back into the lead of this battle. But for how long, as we can see that Wiggins trying to find his way back on through already as they come down towards that braking zone, and as they make their way into Mulsanne corner here, no change this time. Seale holds the position and he holds on to P9 overall, P8 in class for the time being, as they now make their way down towards Indianapolis. Now, as they come charging on down, meanwhile it's the case a bit further up the order. I can tell you that Dan Moorey, when he was chasing after Jamie Dory for some time, but Moorey is now the best part of 12.4 seconds off of Jamie Dory, and Jamie Dory in return here in a lonely P5 as it currently stands, as he makes his way through into the Porsche curves, and as he comes on through right now, just charging after what is Scott, Wedder and Williams. And to be fair to Dory, his lap pace right now is in the high 56s versus the low 58s from Williams, Wedder and Scott. So if he carries on with this momentum, and on the basis that we've got, say, 20 minutes of the race to go, let's just do it as a prediction here, if he gains a second a lap on them, he may be there right at the end of the race, depending on how much more fighting they do, Scott, Wedder and Williams. So do not count Dory out of potentially being within arm's reach of the podium here, as meanwhile Paul Scott at the back of this pack right now, as we can see. Well, he's on the back of Wedder, and I think Wedder's made a mistake at the end of this lap, because you can see that Gareth Williams has finally dropped Wedder after so long of having the Dutchman hound him, and as a result now I think Wedder is in a fight for survival for P3, as we can see Paul Scott all over the back of him as they make their way through the Dunlop chicane on lap number 24. And as we can see there, Alistair Kirk in the YouTube chat, I think giving it a little bit of clarification with regards to what's happened. As we have had the retirement of the pro driver there. He's another one of our drivers to retire. So we've had 5 retirements now, Alistair Kirk being our most recent one, saying that he was fuel saving, trying to make it to the end once he had pitted and mapped his second clutch, but accidentally took his pit limiter off, which meant he was locked at 37 mile an hour, so he's had to retire. Well, that's unfortunate, Alistair Kirk, and the fact that you were racing with COVID and doing your utmost as well is the racer spirit within you, and indeed I don't think anybody can detract from that, and I think a lot of people right now behind their screens will be giving you a round of applause for that. I most certainly am, albeit I can't do it with my actual hands right now for the purposes of filling the microphone with feedback, but I can definitely tell you a lot of praise to yourself, my good friend, and we look forward to seeing you back in round number 7. But in the meantime, looking at this battle for P3 or P2, you can see Gareth Williams is being reeled in slightly here down on the Mulsanne straight, but nowhere near as much as before, and he is able to keep that gap open. And for this point in the race now, here's the critical thing. That gap between himself, like Gareth Williams, and Foyle is now 10 seconds. Now, if Williams can have clean laps from this point onwards, we would predict, in terms of the rate of closure, it may be enough to get in there right at the end. But speaking about getting there now, Paul Scott looking for the move here into the second chicane versus Wedder. And as they make their way through the left into right sequence of corners here, you can see it's the case that Scott has got the move done, but Wedder not fighting this. And I think what Scott's trying to do is trying to catch back up to his teammate. But of course, I think Williams at this point will be saying, no, Scott, don't bring Wedder anywhere near close to me. I've already had to deal with him enough. I just want to go hunt after the leader. And I think Scott now will look to defend as hard as he possibly can to hold on to P3, as we hear that Mark Baker has also come into the pits. Now, Mark Baker coming in. Now, this is a surprise, and what this will mean, where is Gareth Mills? Because Gareth Mills was battling with Baker, and you can see Mills is literally right behind. So they both made a third pit stop. And it's the case that Mark Baker has come out just ahead right now of Gareth Mills in this battle for P4 in the AM class. And that means Travis Linscombe Hatfield is now back into P3. And Hatfield is a long way up the road. So I think for these guys it is a battle for P4 at best as they make the way on through the opening sequence of corners in the run up towards Tetra Rouge. But my goodness, we're seeing 3 stops here at Le Mans where we've only got the mandatory 2, but a number of drivers having to go for a 3rd stop. As Mills gives that pursuit, we ride on board here with the Porsche 911 driver as he makes his way down, and you can hear the high pitched whine here of the car as it's building up towards top speed in 6th gear here, using all the power of the Porsche machinery as he makes his way down towards the braking zone here. And you can see Baker putting the car in the middle of the road. He knows that Mills is there and looking for that potential move. They get ready to go braking here. It's a battle on the brakes, and you can see the Ferrari driver going a bit deeper on that inside line and covering off Mills, but he will be out of position coming out to the first chicane. And this is where Mills can now start to get a little bit close here. If he can make Baker take defensive lines into these chicanes, that will help Mills mitigate his poor straight line speed versus the Ferrari, who have the slipstream as well to help him out. But you can see that rate of closure is not that fast. But now, as he's in 6th gear here, and you can see the overspeed really starting to kick in, Mills looking around the outside here as they go racing down in towards the corner, and as they make their way into the braking zone side by side, they go into the 2nd chicane. Mills ahead initially, he's got his nose ahead, but in the end, as they make their way through, he has to back out with Baker defending to the inside, and they come on through and now down towards the Mulsanne corner. And meanwhile, we can see that Mark Baker just holding on for the time being and trying to keep the South African at bay, but will he be able to do so? That is the big question as they make their way down towards the Mulsanne corner, and as they do come charging on down right now, I think it's one of those situations where Baker's got to do everything he can in order to try and keep Gareth Mills behind. You see Mills there attempting a move on the inside in towards the Mulsanne corner, but not able to find it, and instead has to wait once again as they make their way now down towards Indianapolis. But it's battle between the two of them, fantastic to see, and indeed you have to wonder which one of them is going to come out on top. Now, speaking of coming out on top, in the meantime, I can tell you that with this battle going on, Paul Scott is now behind Lamont Wedder. They have traded places, and Lamont Wedder is only 1.3 seconds off the back of Gareth Williams. But that's beside the point right now as we continue to look at the battle for P4 in the AM class. Baker on the inside here in the run into Indianapolis versus Gareth Mills on the outside, but Mills backs off here and tucks in behind once again, and you can see the Briton really feeling that pressure here, the Team Tetra Rouge driver battling for P4. It's not going to be a podium, but it will still be an important result here, although he would have wanted to be on the podium for the simple reason that his main championship rival and the championship leader, Stefan Wessels, right now is all the way up in P7 overall and is going to extend his championship lead at this rate. As they make their way now down towards the Porsche curves, I do think Baker's going to be safe for at least the rest of this lap, as we're hearing that Chris Keenan is into the pits, and as Keenan is making his way in right now, I believe this may be a scheduled stop. We'll have to wait and see as he creeps his way into the pits here. As he comes on in, I can tell you that William Foyle, meanwhile, our race leader, in a very comfortable lead by 10.1 seconds. And on top of that, given Gareth Williams has now been running in clear air, one thing I can tell you with Foyle is outpacing Williams. That last lap, a 56.7 for Foyle, for Williams a 57.4. Right now, Foyle is on course to take this win under his own momentum, as well as the gap that's been afforded to him by Williams, Scott and Wedder fighting earlier in this race. Foyle is deploying that pace and showing he's got it in the tank in order to be able to get it done. But meanwhile, in that battle for P3 in the Pro Class, Paul Scott leading this battle right now ahead of Lamont Wedder as they make their way down towards that braking zone. As we can see Paul Scott there, hold up a second, Paul Scott disappeared into the ether. No, he's returned. I thought there was going to be a disconnect there and technical issues, but Paul Scott holding on for the time being, as we can see Lamont Wedder stuck behind him now as they make their way down towards Indianapolis once again. As they make their way on through, another similar situation for what is Josh Williams and Michael Seale, and you can see the two Porsche drivers here battling for position as they make their way in the long run down towards the second chicane on the Mulsanne straight, and it's the case that Williams right now not able to find a way back past the Ignium Motorsport driver for the time being. But we look back to Wedder versus Scott here, and you can see Wedder's going to try and go around the outside into Indianapolis, but he can't quite find it, or can he here? He's going to keep the nose in initially, but he backs out in the end, I think noticing there is no opportunity to do so. As they make their way now down in towards what is Orange Corner, you can see it's the situation where Wedder just tucked in behind and not able to find his way on through as they make their way now up towards the Porsche curves. But looking from them to what is a bit further behind, you can see Jamie Dory lurking in the rear of your camera picture. He's now in the centre frame, and it is the case that Dory 6.4 seconds back on Wedder. Can he close up? Well, in terms of pace right now, he's lapping half a second faster than Wedder and Paul Scott. So if he was to do this, he would need to be gaining a second lap, as otherwise he would not be able to essentially close that gap down by the end of the race. And I think it would be the case that Wetter and Scott will need to battle a lot more severely in order for that advantage to be conferred to him, as we are hearing that Liam Tack has just come out of the pits and Chris Keenan's come out of the pits as well. And as they make their way at the back of the field right now, Liam Tack being our last place driver overall, and in the AM class we see Jamie Dory there getting a bit of a tail slide on, coming through the Corvette curves. Once again, it is the case that Paul Scott has made the breakaway from Lambert Wetter. In fact, he's opened that gap up considerably, and I think Lambert Wetter has had a slowdown, because by looks of things, Wetter's into the pits here. Now this is a surprise. Wetter is in for what is, I believe, well, if this is not a pit stop, then it might be a, well, it might be a drive-through penalty. We're just trying to find out how many penalty points he's got. We'll wait to see, as we see Jamie Dory also in here for what is a third pit stop. Now this is unexpected. Are we expecting one more round of pit stops here? Is it not all over yet? That is the big question, because they are both coming in. They are both coming in for stops. They're not coming in to take drive-through or stop and go penalties. They are coming in. They're both parking up. We'll have to wait and see, as we can see that Stefan Vessels will now go on to effectively take P5 in this race. So I think at this point the racing team Astra driver must be thinking to himself, oh goodness me, how many more places am I going to gain? We can see Lambert Wetter coming out of me literally about 10 seconds after stopping. And I think for him, it may be the case that he just needed to top the car up with some fuel. He's not perhaps got enough fuel to go to the end. It hasn't quite worked out, as Jamie Dory has a similar length stop, and Paul Walton gains a place on Dory, and now Walton will see Lambert Wetter ahead of him. I think Walton at this point will be thinking to himself, okay, it's not the race I wanted, but I can go hunting for position. And meanwhile, further back, I can tell you that Michael Seale is ahead of what is, well, he's still ahead of Joshua Williams, but now Jamie Dory has come out behind this battle for what is the P7 in the Pro class. So it is all still pushing on, as we can see there. Alistair Kirk saying in the YouTube chat can confirm they will need one more stop for a splash of fuel. Well, if that is the case that right now, and Joe Fernando Vlogs there cheering on what is Matthew Prouting, with Matthew Prouting down in P10, if we are expecting a third stop from the majority of our drivers for an extra splash of fuel, this is only going to open things up even more here and really intensify the last 15 minutes of this race. You've heard it here first, folks. I do not think this is over. I think it is the case right now. It is going to be one of situations, at least for the podium in the Pro class, and potentially also in the top 5 in the AM class. We are going to see some more chopping and changing. As we can see here, Mark Baker has actually fallen in behind Gareth Mills. How did that happen? Let's take a look. Well, we can see there Mark Baker on what was the outside of Mills having a very strong run. I'm wondering if Baker had a slowdown there, because it looked like he lost a lot of speed going into the corner, and Gareth Mills gaining the position now up into P4 within the AM class as they continue racing. You can see Baker very far back here. He's definitely had a slowdown by looks of things as he's made his way on through. And as they come up through the corners right now, we can see that Jamie Dory here tucked in behind what is Wiggins and Seale still, as they all come charging down towards the second of the Mulsanne chicanes. And as they come on through, it's one of those situations, I think, for all three of these drivers that right now, but particularly for Jamie Dory, he'll see an opportunity here to gain some valuable points. Meanwhile, I think for Josh Wiggins, he'll be thinking at this point, I've got to get ahead of Seale, because this has been a disaster of a day at the races, and I think Seale will not want to give this up whatsoever. They will all be determined to finish at the head of this pack of three. And with what is Walton only the best part of 6.2 seconds up the road, but gradually pulling away, I think it's one of those situations that right now Paul Walton will be trying to hunt down Lambert Wetter as rapidly as possible. But he's got a 2.2 second gap to close down, as we can see there. Still going a bit deep by comparison with the other drivers, and it is the case, I think, that still just having to work it, as we hear that Dan Moorey has had an off here at Indianapolis. Now, with Dan Moorey having that off, is there any damage to the car? Let's take a look what happened. This was only moments ago, as he came down into the very tricky right into left corner, and as he made his way on through, went a bit high on the apex curve there, and that unsettled the car. You could see the car wobbling, and as a result, we got the car stopped very nicely, so no incident with the wall. But Dan Moorey there, I think his heart may have skipped a beat when he had to get the car stopped, because you could see how the car was getting ready to let go and take the driver with him. But instead, Moorey got it back under control. He tamed the beast and now carries on racing in P4, 24.6 seconds down on our top three. But I think right now, just looking to try and bring this car home in P4. We'll have to wait and see, as meanwhile Jamie Dory has found his way past Joshua Williams. He's up into P9 as Jamie Dory, and now chasing after Michael Seale here, the Barracuda with Next Gen Racing driver, really putting that pressure on as they go up towards the Porsche cursor. You can see Seale going defensive into the right-hander. Dory's going to try and go around the outside here. He will have the rotation in the Audi, but can he commit? And as they make their way through, they're side by side. Dory is still there as they go into the left-hander, but he has to back out. He has to put the brake on because it tapers to 1, and he wasn't far enough alongside to be able to force the move and get Michael Seale to back out. Brilliant racing between these two as Paul Scott is into the pits. So your prediction there and your statement, Alistair Kirk, about drivers having to take on more fuel, well, it is now coming to fruition because Paul Scott's in, so is Stefan Vessel's in, and as they all start to make the way, and with Paul Scott just taking a small amount of fuel, I mean, it's going to be the case that right now there's going to be a few shocks to the system where we're going to be seeing these pit stops and how everybody comes on out. But we can see that right now as our drivers come charging on through, well, with what was Paul Scott pitting, he has dropped down to P4 with Dan Moorey ahead of him up the road. But Dan Moorey, of course, with that moment, as we can see it coming charging through, we've got Lambert Wedder there and also Paul Walton chasing after. And Walton is flying here. He is chasing down Lambert Wedder with a vengeance right now. That last lap from Paul Walton at 56.5 versus Wedder's outlap, which was a 4:33. Well, I do think it's the case. Of course, we have to keep in mind that Wedder does not have an actual lap time posted since his pit stops, so we'll wait and see how it plays out. But I would predict that on that last lap alone, Paul Walton took the best part of 1.5 seconds out of Wedder and is continuing to do so now. As meanwhile, behind Michael Seale, we've still got Jamie Dory chasing after him here, and Michael Seale trying to hold on for what is P7 in the Pro Class right now. And Jamie Dory now onto the Mulsanne Straight could be looking at an opportunity. Meanwhile, further back in the AM class, the closest battle of the night in the AM class, and it rages on. Gareth Mills ahead of Mark Baker, and Mark Baker has caught back up to the GM racing machine, but can the Team Tetra Rouge driver in the Ferrari find a way on through? As we're hearing Linscombe Hatfield into the pit lane as well, and will we see these two drivers also peel on in? Will they have made their third stop? So I doubt it. Will we see them jump back up onto the podium? That's the real question here. Linscombe Hatfield's in the pits right now, and he's currently being serviced. Where's Gareth Mills going to come on out? Where's Mark Baker going to come out? Well, they're making their way out of the final corner, and I think they are going to take the position as Linscombe Hatfield is released from his pit box here, but Gareth Mills and Mark Baker take the position, so they are now battling for P3 in the AM class as they make the way on through here. And I think this is a bit of strategic smarts as they make the way now up into the Dunlop chicane, and you'll see Linscombe Hatfield in the rear of your picture shortly. He's right there at the back of your picture. Well, it's the case that he was there briefly as we see Mark Baker almost losing it on the exit of the Dunlop chicane, but right now these two will be battling for P3, and if they battle too hard, could they end up bringing Linscombe Hatfield back into this battle? That's the question. As meanwhile, Stefan Vessels, of course, having made that additional pit stop, is now in P2 in class, but he's only got Darren Doherty the best part of 11 seconds up the road, so unless Doherty is going to go to the end of the race on only 2 stops, it will be the case that Vessels will re-inherit the lead, we believe. Meanwhile, Michael Seale versus Jamie Dory here. You can see Michael Seale not battling hard into the Mulsanne corner. In fact, giving Dory the right to take the apex there. I think that's because he wants to come back immediately. And look at that line that Seale just took coming out of Mulsanne. You could see the momentum with Dory having to go deep in on the inside line and having to brake heavily. Seale has got so much momentum right now as they make their way down towards Indianapolis. And Seale, he's not going to have the inside line. He's going to have the outside to inside line into Indianapolis. But right now, Seale, he's going to be alongside completely as he starts to reach the top speed of that portion. The Audi just has a little bit more gearing, and as they make the way on in, I think it's going to be side by side down into the braking zone. Can Seale get it done? It's very close, but he's not quite able to do it. Dory gave him the room, but had the speed to go around the outside as our race leader is into the pit. Those final rounds of pit stops are still going, and it's the case that right now Gareth Williams also into the pits as well. So both Foyle and Williams are pitting, and Foyle came into the pits with a 9.7 second advantage. Let's just keep that in mind. What about Walton versus Wedder? Well, Walton has made the move versus Wedder on the inside here into the Porsche curves, and I think Walton having that momentum. Let's take a look back. Indeed, it was a drag race here coming out of Arnage up towards the Porsche curves, and you can see Walton there on the left-hand side of your picture on the inside, under braking into the corner, and Wedder had no way to hang the BMW around the outside, with Walton having so much momentum as we look back to live pictures. And now all the pit stops are playing out. Dan Moorey into the pits as well. Paul Scott, of course, having already made his third stop, coming on through here with Walton and Wedder behind. Now we can see William Foyle has already left the pit lane here, so he's going to stay as your leader, and Gareth Williams making his way on out as Dan Moorey is now only just reaching his pit box. box. So Paul Scott will be coming out of the final corner to take back P3 in this race, but he's got Walton and Wedder chasing him right now. They're inching ever closer. 10 minutes to go, and Paul Walton is flying. He's just set the fastest lap of the race, a 3:55.40. And to give you an idea, most of our drivers in the top 10 are lapping in the 56s and the 57s. Walton is lapping in the 55s, and he is on a mission to get back onto that podium as he makes his way on through after the mistake which cost him so dearly in the run out of turn 7 to what was Tetra Rouge corner. As he makes his way around right now through turns 6 and 7, and having to be careful around here. Of course, he doesn't want to be bitten twice, and as he makes his way on through, we can see a bit further back Jamie Dory, having cleared Michael Seale, is now just simply running away or trying to make the break, but it looks so Seale having the better run here in the run up towards Tetra Rouge corner. But it will all tell as they make their way through the right hand here, because if Seale can nail this, he'll be very close come the end of the first part of the Mulsanne Straight. And you can see Wiggins there, and Matthew Prouting also getting into this fight. We haven't talked too much about Prouting recently, but he is closing up as Mark Baker has got ahead of Gareth Mills, I'm also hearing, and as a result, so Mark Baker now up into what is P3 in class, and we'll bring you that back very shortly. You can see Prouting just a little bit far back right now, but definitely looking at an opportunity to go after Jamie Dory, Michael Seale and Joshua Wiggins come the end of this race. We have still got the best part of what is 8 minutes to go plus the final lap of the race, and given our current time and where the leader is out on circuit right now, I would predict we have got, including this lap, 3 more laps to go, and anything can happen. The lead has been cut down between Foyle and Williams, I should inform you, to 8.1 seconds. It was the case that Williams was able to take 1.8 seconds out of what was Foyle's lead in the pit window, but we can see that right now Jamie Dory holding on here, and it looks as though still just not able to get the overspeed he would like here down into the second part of the Mulsanne Straight. And coming into that second chicane, instead he has to wait patiently. But meanwhile, how did Mark Baker get ahead of Gareth Mills, you ask? Well, let's take a look back. Well, it was in the drag race here, in the run down towards what was the first of the Mulsanne chicanes, and Mark Baker just got his nose ahead. It was a long drag race, to be fair, them side by side all the way down. But I think in the end, as they made their way all the way down towards the braking zone, it was the situation whereby I think Mark Baker just simply got it done under braking, and there you can see it, getting it done and then sealing the deal. But now he has got Gareth Mills literally trying to make the way back past in the same place on the circuit as they make their way down towards the first of the Mulsanne chicanes once again. So it seems as though it's a bit of a to me to you situation for these two right now, both enjoying the right to battle one another out in circuit, but not battling too hard, are they? As Mark Baker holds that inside line and blocks off the door and says to Gareth Mills, you're going to need a little bit more of an overspeed before I yield the position this time, as they make their way onto the second part of the straight. But meanwhile, as we look from them to Jamie Dory right now, who's got Michael Seale on his inside this time into Indianapolis. Now you can see there Dory giving him the space, but Seale in the end having to back out there, being on that left, on the right hand curb. And as they made their way through the corner, Seale still all over the back of the Audi R8 driver as they come into the braking zone for Arnage. No change between them. And it does look as though they're with 6.5 minutes to go right now. Seale's going to be tucking in, looking for an opportunity later on in the lap. You can see Matthew Prouting now only a second off of this battle, and Dan Moorey only 5.8 seconds further back. If this battle really kicks off in terms of they start defending every corner come the final 2 laps, you can imagine that Matthew Prouting and also Dan Moorey will be right there in this, because at Le Mans it's the case, whilst it is just shy of a 4-minute lap, battling into every single corner where you can cost yourself up to in the region of 6 to 7 seconds of time on a single lap, and that is something which drivers will not want to do, as we're hearing that Mark Baker and Gareth Mills are continuing to trade. Oh goodness me, and what has happened here? I think Mark Baker has gone off. Now, was there contact between the two drivers? Let's just take a look back at what happened. Well, this was earlier on in the lap. In fact, Mark Baker, before they even got to Tetra Rouge, made a mistake. So the battle kicked off much earlier on. And then we saw them going down the straight. What about at the very end, however? That's the big question. Well, they were making their way down towards Mulsanne corner. Now, they were side by side here. Baker on the inside, but Baker carrying a lot of momentum into the corner and just getting it wrong. And to be fair, Mills almost followed him. But in the end, Baker just outbraking himself. And Mills almost outbraking himself alongside Baker. I think Mills was trying to outbrake Baker. And when he saw Baker was deciding not to take the corner, Mills had to sort of say to himself, okay, let's just get the car parked and turn it through the corner, because Linscombe Hatfield is now chasing me. As meanwhile, with all this going on, you can see Linscombe Hatfield a bit further further back, but we look a bit further up the order and we are hearing that Michael Seale is into the pits. Now, Michael Seale was pitted to take some fuel to go to the end, and that is a disaster for Michael Seale, who was running very strongly. And meanwhile, Josh Wiggins has fallen behind Matthew Broughton. Now, how has Broughton got past Josh Wiggins? That's the question that we all want the answer to. Well, here is the answer, ladies and gentlemen. So as they're making their way out of what was turn 1, it looks as though they're Wiggins going slowly. Did he have a slowdown to burn? But Wiggins was going very slowly, particularly after we saw Michael Seale come into the pit lane and Broughton just simply going past him as if he was pedestrian. But we'll have to wait and see what that was all about. I do think it may have been a slowdown penalty as they make their way now down through what is the first of the moles and chicanes. And as they come on through, we can see Greg B there commenting in the YouTube chat on Mills and Baker having a proper battle indeed for over an hour within a second of one another, if not more. And meanwhile, Paul Scott and Paul Walton are battling for the final step of the pro podium now. It is the case that they're on the penultimate lap, and as they make the way through, you can see Walton having to really wrangle that Lamborghini. He wants to be on the podium at a minimum. He does not want Williams to gain anything out of this, or the minimum he can out of this. Walton will feel as though he has thrown away what is a win, and now it's all about trying to get back into P3 as they make their way side by side down towards the Mulsanne corner. Walton on the outside, Scott on the inside here. They go to battle on the brakes, and you can see both drivers, they're braking as late as humanly possible, and Walton just not able to outbrake Paul Scott. But as they now make their way in the run down towards Indianapolis, we ride on board here with a frantic sounding V10 and Lamborghini Huracan. They go charge them down. You can see there Paul Scott going defensive on what is the inside as they come charging on in, and it's going to be the overspeed here as they make their way through. It's Walton on the outside here. Will he be able to get this done? That will be the question as they make their way down towards the braking zone here. Walton's got his nose ahead, and as they come into the right hander, will he be able to get it done? They're side by side still. Scott's still there with him, and Walton just keeping his nose in. They're side by side through Indianapolis up towards Arnage right now. I think Walton will look for the cutback. He'll brake early to go into an early apex, and as they make their way through the corner, he does so, and it's the case that Scott gets the corner wrong and goes a bit deep, and Scott loses the position, and now Lambert Wedder is all over the back of the pair of them, and particularly Paul Scott and Walton will make the break immediately here because Paul Scott will have lost a lot of momentum in recovering the car. The gap has opened up to 9/10 of a second, and as they make their way on through now into the Porsche curves, a brave move from Walton. To be fair to Scott, he gave it everything he could, but in the end he just made one mistake into Arnage, and that is what gave up the position. But Wedder now will be looking to capitalise here and move into P4, but can he, as he comes to the end of what is lap number 29, and they will go into a 30th and final lap of this 2-hour endurance race, as we can see Lambert Wedder making his way through the Corvette curves right now and trying to stay as close as he possibly can to the back of Paul Scott as they make their way up towards what is the Ford chicanes. But the leader, that is William Foyle, and you can see him here making his way across the timeline, has gone on to the final lap as the white flag is out, and you can see just a little bit further back in the picture we've got Gareth Williams 7.5 seconds behind and not closing rapidly enough, but Paul Walton will be looking to capitalise. He will be pushing as hard as he possibly can. If he can't get P2, he will want that gap to be as short as possible in case Williams makes a mistake. Alternatively, he gets a post-race penalty. He will want to be as close as he can to his championship rival. Walton will know that every point is critical in this championship going into the Christmas break. Meanwhile, Matthew Prouting chasing down Jamie Dorey here in the battle for P6 in the Pro class. They make their way on through. These are the closest battles out on circuit right now, and I can tell you in the battle for the podium of what is the battle of the podium of the AM class, it would seem that Gareth Mills has dropped back behind Mark Baker as we see Nigel Stock into the pits here for a last minute pit stop, and that is another disaster of a moment for a driver, and this time Nigel Stock having to make a third stop right at the end and not able to get the car all the way to the finish on 2 stops. But meanwhile, if you excuse me briefly there, folks, a little bit of wind. It is the case that Matthew Prouting putting that pressure on to the back of Jamie Dorey as they make their way through the right-hand kink to go onto the Mulsanne straight. You can see Prouting now looking around the outside as they head all the way down towards the first of the 2 chicanes. They make their way down. Prouting has got his nose ahead, but we know as they build up the speed here and head all the way down into the braking zone, who is going to be the bolder on the brakes? Well, we do know that Dorey loves to be bold on the brakes. Prouting as well. They are still side by side as they come on through to the chicane. Dorey tries to to hang it around the outside and cut back to the inside. Prouting goes a little bit deep here. They give one another racing room. The battle continues. It's still a drag race here. It's Audi power versus BMW power. It's a battle of the German giants as they come roaring down towards the second chicane. It's going to be Dory on the inside this time. Prouting on the outside, but Prouting losing out slightly now as they build up through the gears. Into sixth gear they both go. You can see behind there Joshua Wiggins quite close as well, looking on as they make their way into the braking zone. Dory is now ahead by what is half a car's length, and as they make their way into the braking zone this time, it is the case that Prouting has to back off, but he will look to do what Dory did to him in the previous iteration as they make their way now through the second chicane and down towards Mulsanne corner. And as they head all the way down right now, Prouting will have that speed. He'll build it up rapidly here in the slipstream of the Audi in front. You can see Joshua Wiggins only 1.4 seconds back. Prouting knows he needs to make this move count, otherwise we could be seeing the RD Simsport Porsche getting involved right at the final hour as they make their way down into the braking zone. Prouting on the inside, Dory on the outside. They try to battle on the brakes, and it's going to be Prouting who takes that inside line, but he goes very deep, and as a result now Dory cuts back, and it's another drag race here down towards Indianapolis, but there's no slipstreams. They're both side by side. And as they make their way roaring down the straight right now, it's the case you can see that Jamie Dory just able to get ahead briefly, and he's got that safe inside to outside line. But meanwhile, Prouting, if he can stay fully alongside, he could commit to an outside to inside line to Indianapolis. It's about who's the braver of the two of them as they make their way down towards what is Indianapolis corner. Into Indianapolis they go. It's Dory ahead. He's got his nose ahead, and Prouting backs out of it, but looks to the inside here into the left-hander. He can't find it, as meanwhile Joshua Wiggins tries to close up and is now all over the back of this battle as they make their way into the final third of the circuit as they come through Arnage, and as they make their way on through the right hand here, it's the situation where it's going to be Jamie Dory who leads this battle for P6 in the Pro Class to its conclusion. But we do have to look away from them briefly, because right now as he makes his way through the Corvette curves, this has been a demonstration of how to perform a flawless race on strategy and just manage the race through and through. He started towards the front given his championship standings, but it doesn't matter when you nail the race from start to finish, when you get the strategy right, when you put in lap after lap. And as he makes his way through the final chicane, it will be William Foyle from Crest Autosport who takes the overall win at Le Mans in Lobby 2 and the win in the Pro Class. A brilliant drive from William Foyle, 6.6 seconds clear of Gareth Williams who finishes in P2, and then it will be Paul Walton who leads the pack from P3 to P5 ahead of Paul Scott and Lamont Wedder as he comes across the line. Paul Walton to take the final step of the podium ahead of Paul Scott and Lamont Wedder, and then it will be Jamie Dory. And when all is said and done, as I think that we have seen a bit of a side-by-side moment between Wiggins and Prouting, it is Jamie Dory who finishes P6 ahead of Josh Wiggins and Matthew Prouting in P8. Dan Moorey will come across the line in P9 when all is said and done. And as he makes his way across that timing line, we look to Stefan Wessels here. Well, what do we say about the championship leader in the AM class? Well, he started from the back and he has not let this one go. He has managed this race, much like the win of the Pro Class. He's managed it to perfection, and it is the South African of Stefan Wessels from Racing Team Astra who takes the win in the AM class here at Le Mans by a sizable margin over his peers. It will then be Michael Seale who comes home P11 overall, P10 in the Pro Class. A difficult day at the races for Michael Seale. It was looking so strong until that last minute pit stop saw him drop down the order, and Paul Williams finishes P12 overall as he crosses the line. And it's going to be Darren Doherty who crosses the line in the end as he makes his way through the Ford chicanes here in a rather brilliant P2 in the AM class. He'll be pleased with that, no doubt. The Altitude Esports driver, a fantastic drive from the Irishman, and definitely some huge points on the board for him. It'll then be Nigel Stock who crosses the line, P14 overall, P12 in the Pro Class as he makes his way across here. And then after a brilliant battle with Gareth Mills for the best part of an hour where they were nose to tail, it looks as though Mark Baker is the one who will come out in the end on top of this battle. We didn't quite see how they traded places for the last time. I think there was an off track from Gareth Mills, but what I can tell you is that Mark Baker will complete our podium in the AM class, and he will take P3 for Team Tetra as he crosses the line ahead of Gareth Mills. A brilliant drive from the pair of them as they come on through, and we see Gareth Mills there crossing the line, and then it will be Nathan J. Scott who comes home in P17 overall, P13 in the Pro Class as he makes his way on through. And it is Travis Linscombe Hatfield who, as he comes through the final set of corners, it wasn't to be his day due to how the strategy worked out, but the American gave it everything he had, and he will come across the line in P18 overall, and that is P5 in the AM class, and a drive to learn from, but definitely a huge contender going forward as we see Stefan Albanese here. Well, he is making his way to the end of the lead lap of lap number what is 30 as he comes on through here. The Italian not having a good day today at Le Mans. To be fair, not one of his happiest hours, but at the same time, I think Albanese will take pride in it. He's brought the car home to the end, and the DRS eSport team will be pleased with what they've been able to manage to achieve when all is said and done in this first Super Endurance race as he makes his way through the final set of corners. He comes home P19 overall. That's P14 in class, the last of our pros to finish this race, and then it will be Davide Favo, who is the penultimate driver to finish this race on the lead lap ahead of his teammate Elwyn Sykes. It's the case that Racing Team Astra at the respective polar ends of the field in the AM class at the front and the rear, and Davide Favo will come home ahead of Elwyn Sykes, P6 in the AM class, Elwyn Sykes P7 in the AM class, as they both cross the finish line there in a wonderful camera shot. Indeed, a bit of promotional material for Racing Team Astra as they cross the line there. We also had Paul Coburn, who finished a lap down in P8 in the AM class, P22 overall, and we also had the retirements of Liam Tack, Chris Keenan, Alistair Kirk, Jack Wyborn, Mark Sykes, Antonio Giovinazzi and Rick Janssen. And that is how our 29 drivers finished the race. As we see there, I think the Racing Team Astra drivers having a little bit of a friendly bump, but that's also going to go onto the team budget for the Christmas celebrations. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for us to take a brief pause to prepare for the post-race interviews. But before we do that, what a race, particularly at the front of the field in the Procast. And it was very unpredictable through and through. I think Foyle right now, if anybody was doubting the pace which the Crest Autosport driver had, he has put a landmark out there to say he wasn't the fastest driver, to be fair, over every single lap, but he made the track position count, and it was his consistency and the ability to avoid battling with other drivers that gave him the advantage that took him to the win in the end. Gareth Williams, he's come home in P2, of course. He will extend his lead in the Pro Championship to a degree versus Paul Walton, but only by the minimal margin, given that Walton finished P3, and Gareth Williams will know that it was the battling in the end with Lamont Wedder and Paul Scott which cost him, in his mind he'll believe it cost him the opportunity to chase down Foyle, because in the end he was closing Foyle down, but he didn't have enough time. And Paul Walton, well, he's taken the car back into the pits and they've already put it in the garage, but I think it's going to be one of those days where he will be ruining that one mistake he made. As we see our drivers coming on around, and Stefan Vessels meanwhile in the AM class here as he comes into the pits. What a day for the Racing Team Astra driver here. Another proud day at the office as he makes his way on in. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be right back. We'll just prepare for our post-race interviews with our race winners. Do not go anywhere. You will not want to miss them. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen. Well, without further ado, we're going to be kicking off our post-race interviews for the feature race with our winners. Very shortly, I've just had a moment to try and get what's left of my voice back. Well, after an absolutely fantastic race, and we can see there in the Facebook chat, a lot of people enjoying it. Mark Grant there in the Facebook chat saying well done to Paul Walton, driver of the race in his mind. And indeed, Deborah Grant as well, very happy with Paul Walton's performance, and Elizabeth Ferns as well, and enjoying it and saying that everyone was fantastic. Deborah Grant, that's great to hear. And also Stephen Berry there saying RTA, very happy with the performance of RTA. And we can see what was it, Benji Racing in the YouTube chat saying well done at William Foyle. But speaking of William Foyle, let's get him in here for his post-race interview and hear from our winner in the pro class. Hello, William. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, mate.
William, a brilliant drive from yourself, taking the win at the end in the pro class at Le Mans. How does it feel to have conquered the tricky and troublesome endurance circuit?
It feels great. I really did not expect going into the event today to actually even challenge for the win. So to actually come out for the win is fantastic.
Well, that's absolutely great too. And just dissecting things, obviously you started towards the upper portion of the Pro Pack with the reverse championship order. Did that sort of play into the sort of strategy you were going to employ? Because it seemed as though straight out from the start you were deploying a lot of pace and trying to make the break at the front of the field.
Yeah, that is exactly what I was going to try and do. But I messed up the start, and basically the brakes and the tyres were so cold, it sent me wide straight into the first corner. So yeah, making up the 9 positions that I needed to make up to get back in the lead and then try and pull a gap, yeah.
In terms of making that recovery, a brilliant recovery to come charging through the field. Just taking us through from the perspective of us as the viewer, when you're having to push that hard over the course of the 2 hours, and particularly in a car which I've heard is very tricky to drive, the Audi R8, what's that balancing act you have to do in terms of, is it the tyres are always on edge, or knowing when you can push the tyres a bit harder? Because we saw at certain points in the race where you were lapping in, say, the 358s and managing at a very consistent pace, and there were times as well where you were absolutely deploying lap time. I think there were a number of points where you were the fastest man on circuit by half a second to a second compared to everyone else.
Yeah, it's definitely a balancing act in the Audi because the braking, it can be very tricky. You can basically swap ends very easily. The balance is very on the throttle as well mid corner, so it's a very tricky car. Lap time wise, yeah, I was really unsure whether we were able to fuel save to do a 2-stop, but eventually it didn't look like that happened for anyone.
We did have a couple of drivers who attempted it. Alistair Kirk did attempt it and almost made it. I think also Michael Seale literally missed out by 1 lap in the end. There were some out there who attempted it, but the majority, I think, had worked out it had to be a 3-stop in the end due to the fuel situation. Was that something that you'd factored in from the start, or was it a bit of a reactionary, oh goodness, I've now got to put a 3rd stop into the strategy?
Yeah, it was very reactionary because the entire time from basically at least, I'd say an hour, say 20 minutes in, we were thinking, oh man, everyone's 2-stopping, we're not saving enough fuel. We're going to have to do another pit and drop basically all the position all the time we made up. But yeah, so that's the reason why our lap times probably fluctuated as well, because we were thinking, do we need to try and stay together and slipstream each other to try and fuel save?
I see. And then when it played out in terms of knowing that there was that 3rd stop that was required, or is very likely, we saw that you at the front had quite a margin over the chasing pack, particularly in the form of, say, Gareth Williams, Lamont Wedder and Paul Scott. And I have to ask, what was going through your mind when you saw they were closing, but then they started to fall back from fighting one another?
Yeah, the fighting I think really did help me. The fact that they were they held each other up, because I think if Gaz hadn't have ended up behind I don't know what the other driver's name is in the BMW, I really think he would have been on me and actually passed me for the win. But yeah, to be able to maintain that gap and sort of manage it and just focus on the road ahead really did help in this race.
Oh, that's brilliant. Now, looking ahead, of course, we've got the Christmas break. We've got the 2-week break before we return for round number 7, and we'll be heading to the Red Bull Ring. What are your thoughts for the Austrian circuit?
I love that track. Even though there's only a few corners on it, I think it's probably one of the most challenging tracks on the calendar, probably apart from Mount Panorama, simply because you've got to get your braking so accurate around that track, and that's going to be tricky to do in the Audi.
Well, we look forward to seeing how you get on at the Red Bull Ring in 2 weeks' time. But until then, congratulations once again on a superb drive to victory. And, well, we also wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you. You too, Phil.
So hearing there from William Fall, very happy with his performance, and indeed I think a bit shocked as well with regards to the amount of battling that occurred behind him between Wedder, also Gareth Williams and Paul Scott. But in the end, that battling plus also that deployment of his consistent pace gave him the ability to make the breakaway, and then with that advantage of what was 9.7 seconds coming into that final pit stop, he had the room to play with. So even if he started lapping a second lap slower, he wasn't going to, lose out on the win at the very end. And we saw, to be fair, we saw Gareth Williams take 3 seconds out of that lead come the checkered flag, but it wasn't enough. And to be fair as well, you've got to give credit where it's due to William Fall, deploying that Audi the way he did and having to recover all those positions at the start as well, something which we haven't really talked too much about, him making that mistake at the start and dropping down the order, where it's a sign, I think, of things to come. And indeed, the fast-firing foil, I think, will be charging through the field come the second half of the season. But now we must head over to our AM winner, and that is Stefan Wessels. Let's get the South African driver in here and see what he thought of today's race. Hello, Stefan. Can you hear me?
Hey, Paul. Yep, loud and clear.
Stefan, another brilliant drive from yourself and taking the win at Le Mans in the AM class. I have to ask, how does it feel to have conquered the endurance circuit?
No, super happy. It was a long race and trying to avoid the slowdowns, which so bad at this track. So now I'm super happy to get a top 10 overall, starting from last on the grid. So no, great race for me from my side.
Taking it all the way back, of course, having to worry about the slowdowns over the course race, but right at the start of the race, obviously, you were starting right at the back of the Anfield, and we saw the Anfield, to be fair, actually had quite a quiet start in terms of everybody went as per procedure by the looks of things. What was your plan to try and come through the Anfield? Was it to try and come through as quickly as possible, or was it more sort of just play it out based on strategy and gradually build into the race? Because I think there was that uncertainty around the third pit stop as well.
Yeah, so I pretty much knew from practice yesterday that we were going to have to do a third pit stop if we basically go flat out. So my aim was lap 1 just to hang back. I wasn't worried about any overtakes on lap 1. And then from there, basically make sure that I can get a proper run on someone, have a clean overtake. I didn't want to go through any of the fast bits side by side. Actually in places probably let off too much, and it cost me to get another straight or two before I could actually get the overtake done. But I was just going for the safe route, back my pace, and just go for it, eh?
Oh, definitely. I can see that approach there in terms of being a bit conservative and then knowing where to go for it. And with regards to when you were starting to come through the field, we did see quite a rate of attrition where a number of drivers were making mistakes in different corners, particularly the run from the Dunlop chicane down to Tetra Rouge and also the run through Indianapolis. But you just seemed to not even put a foot wrong. It looks as though that Ferrari was on rails in your hands. How do you do it?
I just kept it within 9/10 of the pace. I wasn't going flat out, and the second stint when the tires were second stint on the tires, the car was quite twitchy in the brakes coming into the second Mulsanne chicane. So yeah, it was tricky, lots of concentration, but I just tried my best to keep it smooth. Eh?
Oh, definitely, and that's a very logical approach there. And when the third stop came around, of course, your advantage on the rest of the Anfield quite sizable then. It looked as though it was quite a straightforward stop. No need to rush, just take it when it goes. But it's just the case that you sort of, right, I'll just come in, take it nice and sweet, and just bring this one home?
Yeah, I actually added the extra lap of fuel just in case you missed the cutoff and you have to do one more lap. So just in case, I added extra lap of fuel. So it was I had the opportunity to do that. So yeah, I did it.
Oh, it definitely makes sense. And now looking forward to, obviously, we've got the Christmas break now. We've got 2 weeks off, and then we return at the start of 2022 with the Red Bull Ring. How are you feeling for the Austrian circuit?
I actually enjoy it. I did one of the Ferrari GT Challenge races on week 13, so about a week ago, and it was the first time I tried the track on iRacing, and I really enjoyed it. So I'm actually looking forward to this one.
Oh, well, we look forward to seeing how you get on at Spielberg in 2 weeks' time. But until then, well, fantastic driving yourself once again. Well done the win, and also wishing you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thanks, Paul. Same for you.
I wish you all the best.
Cheers, Brett. Bye.
To hear there from Stefan Wessels, who was very happy with what was a measured race from him. As you heard there at the start, he was very conservative with his approach to the race, and he was saying himself, perhaps even hung back a bit too much with regards to trying to make moves, and then being aware of the fact that there was going to be free stops. I think there was a point where Stefan essentially said to himself, right, now the chains come off, we go charging after those positions, and that's how he started to make his way up through the AM field, and in the end, by the halfway point of the race, he was into the lead of the AM class and making the breakaway, and then just balancing the car. And as he was saying, once he got into the lead, he was managing it to a pace, not driving at 100%. And in these long races at tricky circuits such as Le Mans, where you've got that whole multitude of corners and the car goes through multiple cycles in terms of its performance and the relative levels at which the tyres and the brakes are performing, sometimes it's better to drive, say, at 90% than it is closer to 100%. And it definitely worked out for our AM winner in the end. And of course, it's going to be interesting to see how our winners get on when they return after the Christmas break at Spielberg. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, that does mean it's time for us to bring things to a close for Lobby 2, or the Coach Dave Academy and Next Level Racing Lobby, until January 2022. But thank you very much for watching, and if you do want to know more about the Next Gen Racing community, or even drop us some feedback or drop us a comment on how much you've enjoyed the show or what we can do better, be sure to get in touch with us at our official website. That's nextgenracing.co.uk. Alternatively, we have our official Facebook group, which is facebook.com/groups/nextgenracing. Also, a huge thank you to our partners, without whom it would not be possible to bring you this series. That is Coach Dave Academy and Next Level Racing. We really appreciate their input through and through, and we're very happy to have them with us from start to the end. But now, speaking about ends, we've come to the end of our first half of the season, and with a 2-week break, we'll be back with the Red Bull Ring at Spielberg for round number 7 on Thursday, the 6th of January 2022. Now, you'll notice we're moving back from Wednesdays to Thursdays at the start of 2022, and that is because we are going to be making some sizable upgrades to the broadcast in terms of the quality of the broadcast, and as a result, we'll be moving the Coach Dave Academy Next Level Racing broadcast back to Thursdays, because of the technical issues we had at the start of the year saw us move it to Wednesdays. We'll be moving it back to Thursdays, or at least that's the intention. We'll keep you briefed if it does stay on Wednesdays, but until then, our drivers now, after their Christmas break and all the Christmas pies and whatnot, will be getting ready to attack the Red Bull Ring circuit. And as we can see here, a preview lap from Stefan Wessels provides us, and we'll give you the onboard when we return at the start of the new year. It is the case that Stefan Wessels is going to be showing us how to deal with the Austrian circuit, and this is a circuit where it's all about carrying speed through the corners and then battling down the straights. There are 3 sectors here where it's all about maintaining that speed, and this is going to be a very different circuit from Le Mans. The lap quite short, but it's also one that's fast and furious, and there's plenty of overtaking opportunities, with a lot of the corners being heavy braking zones and wide braking zones at that. I mean, there's plenty of room to go for moves. Who will come out on top in 2 weeks' time, and who will get their second half of the championship off to a flying start, we'll have to wait and see. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, it's goodbye from all of us here at Next Gen Racing, and it's goodbye from me, your commentator and host, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, and we'd like to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We look forward to seeing you rejoin us in 2022, but until then, remember to stay safe, stay smiling, stay smart, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.